Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in this super exciting video, we'll be taking a look at our very first Battle Tome. I'll be doing a deep dive review of the Skaven Battle Tome. We'll go through all of the different rules, the different ways that you're going to be able to play it. Now, one thing to remember as we do go through this video, that we're not going to be able to talk about all the points right now, because at the point of recording, points aren't out, which is fine. That's not a problem, because we're going to follow this video with multiple other videos. We're going to do some tier lists, we're going to do some points reviews, we're going to start looking at some lists. So this is just the first of many videos that we're going to do for the Skaven Battle Tome. But this is all of the rules, all of the different war scrolls, and I'm going to be taking you through them and hopefully providing you with a really good guide. But if there's any questions or anything that you need to answer, then please do leave them in the comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, A, on the book, on the units that you love, and also on armies you're planning to play. Because I love this game, and I love seeing what other people are doing with the game. I'm joined by the Twitch chat. We'll be covering this video over the course of like several hours in a Twitch stream, and you'll be seeing the condensed recorded version now. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump straight in, and let's start looking at the battle traits for the army. Before we talk about the battle traits, actually, I should just tell you what's in the book. I think that's a good thing to do. We've got 4 different battle formations for the main army, 3 heroic traits, 3 artifacts, a spell lore, only a single one, 1 prayer lore, 1 manifestation lore, a terrain scroll, obviously, and then there are 2 armies of renown in here, 2 different ones, and 2 regiments of renown as well, which is cool. So we'll be covering all of those through the video. So the first thing that we're going to look at is going to be the battle traits. If you are new to Age of Sigmar, I'll just quickly let you know, and people already know, I know you know, but I'm just helping out new people. Battle traits are kind of your overarching army rules, which are going to apply to most of your units, but you know, they're all keyworded, but it really describes how your army is going to play. Many of these rules are focused around your terrain piece, which are gnaw holes. There are up to 3 of them that you're going to be able to put on the board at once, and we'll talk about all of that now. So the first rule that we're going to look at is Splinters of the Vermin Doom. This is on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, they're not kind of in a chronological order. Once per battle round, at the start of any battle round, you can use this ability if there are fewer than 3 friendly gnaw holes on the battlefield. A gnaw hole is like a singular piece of terrain, and like I say, they sell them as a pack of 3. You set up the gnaw hole on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units, more than 1 inch from all friendly units, and more than 3 inches from all objectives and other terrain features. Now, this isn't actually that easy to do, because in the current General's Handbook, or in any General's Handbook, Games Workshop provides army maps, terrain maps. And then when you put terrain on the board, it's actually quite hard to get these 3 inches away from all the other pieces of terrain. It's not quite as hard as maybe doing it with a Sylvaneth Wildwood, but it's still fairly difficult. Either way, this means at the start of each battle round, you're going to be able to put a gnaw hole on the table. And this is actually really, really useful because you have loads of other abilities that key off the gnaw hole. However, at the start of the battle, before this happens, you'll already to be able to deploy a gnaw hole. Now, this doesn't say it here, which is very confusing. So let me just explain why. In the core rules, it says in step 1 of the deployment phase that you'll deploy a faction terrain feature. So what you'll do is you'll put a gnaw hole down in this deployment phase before you start deploying the armies. Then you'll deploy your armies, everything else. Then it'll be the start of the first battle round, and that's when Splinters of the Vermin Doom will come in, and you'll put a second gnaw hole on the board. So it means at the start of turn 1, there'll be 2 gnaw holes on the board. Super cool for you. We love that. So that is how that works. Sweet. Let's look at what a gnaw hole is. That's the easiest thing to do now. So a gnaw hole is a piece of terrain, and it's got 6 health with a 4-up save. So in Age of Sigmar, you're going to be able to destroy faction terrain. So your opponent's going to be able to charge it. Your opponent's going to be able to fight it, going to be able to shoot it as well. Also, they can deploy basic deep strike and stuff straight onto it. So it's going to be really challenging to keep alive. But thankfully, unlike other people's faction terrains, you're going to be able to bring them back, which is really good because you are going to be able to bring models back from it. Okay, so 6 health, 4-up save, not super survivable, but that's fine because you can bring them back. It's got 3 special rules. First one is a passive called Volatile Ground. Models can pass through this terrain feature, but cannot be set up on or end moves on any part of this terrain feature. And each time an enemy unit does move, ends a move that passed through or across this terrain feature, you roll a d3. On a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage equal to the roll. So maybe D3 damage if maybe they move across it. So that's not really that big a deal, but you know, it's there. If you remember and if they remember. The next ability, second best ability, is Tunnels 3 Reality. It's done in your movement phase, and you pick a friendly Skaven unit that is not in combat and is wholly within 6 inches of this terrain feature to be the target. Remove the target from the battlefield, set it up again, wholly within 6 inches of another friendly Gnaw-hole, more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This is pretty cool because it means you're going to be able to reposition your power pieces, maybe move your caster somewhere else, maybe be able to reposition where you're going to put your shooting units to be able to draw a better line of sight on your opponent. Very effective ability for being able to reposition where your power is on the board. Excellent. And the last ability, arguably the best ability, is the Endless Vermintide, which can only be done once per turn across the whole army at the end of your turn. And this ability lets you pick a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit that has been destroyed to be the target. Now, it costs a command point. That's what that little 1 symbol up there. Command points are something you generate at the start of each battle round. And they're a very limited resource. So 1 command point to be able to do this. But it's a pretty cool effect. Set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit rounding up. Wholly within 6 inches of friendly Gnaw-hole and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. So you've got yourself 10 Stormvermin. They get killed. You're going to be able to bring 5 Stormvermin back for a command point. But it does require you to use the Gnaw-hole. It does also require a command point. So that's something you're going to have to be conscious of. And also, it's more effective the more useful a unit is. So, or the more expensive a unit is. So if you look at something like Stormvermin, which, not Stormvermin, if you look at Storm Fiends, they are obviously a very expensive unit. If you have a reinforced unit of Storm Fiends, unit 6 down to unit 3, we love that. That's absolutely fantastic. So that is really effective. So that is everything for a Gnaw-hole. So you're going to deploy one at the start of the game. You're going to deploy one at the start of the first battle round. You're going to be able to teleport units across it. You're going to be able to bring models back from the dead from it, which is pretty good. Being able to put units in reserve is another rule that it has, thanks to the Lurking Vermintide ability that's done in your deployment phase. Pick a friendly Skaven unit that has not been deployed, set up that unit in reserve in the tunnels below it has now been deployed. The reason that this would be something very cool to do, if your opponent's got a very aggressive shooting unit or even a very aggressive charging unit, what you can do is make sure that unit is safe and in a different position and able to maybe pop out of a Gnaw-hole, thanks to the Gnaw-hole ambush ability, which in your movement phase, pick a friendly Skaven unit that is in the tunnels below to use this ability, set up that unit holding within 6 inches of a friendly Gnaw-hole and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So you can bring that unit in from reserve and pop it on the board. Now that's pretty good because this basically means if you were to go first in a battle round, you could put a Gnaw-hole down, which your opponent wasn't expecting, bring a unit in from reserve, teleport another unit between 2 Gnaw-holes as well. That's a very effective series of things that you're going to be able to do. Your opponent's going to have to try really hard to shut down your utility from these terrain pieces. But what's nice is you're going to be able to keep putting them back, which is pretty cool. So quite a lot of stuff happening with the Gnaw-holes, something more for you to learn, but also something more for your opponent to worry about. So now we're done with the Gnaw-holes. There are 2 other battle traits that you have. The first one is done in your hero phase, and it's done once per turn across the army, so you can only do it once. Pick a friendly, non-monster Skaven unit that is not in combat or was not set up this turn to use this ability. That unit can use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase. Loads of good applications for this. Moving unit out of potential shooting and or charge ranges from your opponent is pretty nice. Like that a lot. Also, being able to move into areas to threaten using the countercharge mechanic, which is a command ability that you can do to charge in your opponent's turn, because this is done in the enemy hero phase. So that's the ability to set up a countercharge or even just move a unit to threaten a countercharge. Another good thing about this ability is because it's done in the enemy hero phase, it's done after they've chosen a battle tactic. So what you might be able to do is move a unit to start threatening that they might not be able to achieve a battle tactic. All of these are really excellent. Obviously, it's locked to non-monster Skaven units, but it means you can move artillery pieces, big combat units, all sorts of really cool stuff. And the last ability is a passive called Too Quick to Hit, which will affect all of your infantry and cavalry units because no mortal damage is inflicted on friendly Skaven infantry or cavalry units using retreat abilities. Retreat abilities normally do D3 mortal damage to a unit, so you can avoid that as well. So looking at the battle traits for Skaven, it looks like what they want to do is teleport around the board, moving from Deep Strike, and then potentially use some movement shenanigans to put them in the right position. But right now, we haven't necessarily seen if they're like, a magic, combat, shooting army. And looking at the roster, we know that actually they can do all of those pieces. You can really super specialize or hyper specialize, or you can kind of build a really like mixed force here. So a pretty nice set of battle traits, and being able to put up those gnaw holes in different locations is going to make your opponent keep second guessing. Next up, you will be taking a battle formation. On your army list, you have to pick a battle formation, and you have 4 to choose from. Each one hyper focuses or hyper specializes your army a little bit, or probably just really adds some to support to your really strong units. So the 4 that we're going to talk about are the Warpcog Convocation. First one gives you an ability called the Scryer prototypes, where once per turn in your army in your shooting phase, you can pick up to 3 friendly scry units to be the targets. Roll a dice for each target and apply the corresponding effect. The first one, if you roll a 1, unfortunately inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. 2 to 5, you add 1 to wound rolls to the target's shooting attacks for the rest of the turn. And on a 6, in addition to having +1 to wound, you get +1 rend. Obviously, this is really excellent. And you could make a pretty devastating gun line. +1 to wound is really nice, and also +1 to rend is really nice, although that's very unlikely to happen most of the time. I don't know if this is necessarily as much of a step up as some of the others, but this is good if you are hyper-focusing on certain units like Jezzails, because they're really good right now. But right now, at time of recording, if you're watching this in like 2 years' time, maybe this won't be relevant. But the GHB or the General's Handbook right now allows a shooting unit to get +1 to hit, +1 to wound if it's in the General's Regiment against units in the enemy General's Regiment. So that's already a flat buff that you don't need to roll a dice for. But this allows you to do it multiple different units, 3 scry units. That's pretty effective. The next one, Flesh Meld Menagerie, so that battle formation, gives you the ability Prized Creations, where once per turn across your army in your hero phase, you can pick up to 3 friendly non-hero Moulder units to be the targets. So this is going to be Storm Fiends, this is going to be the new Brood Terror, and this is also going to be Rat Ogres. Roll a dice for each target and apply the corresponding effect. On a 1 to 2, Self-Destructive Fury, inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. On a 3 to 4, +1 to the attack characteristic of the target's melee weapons until the start of your next turn. You may be asking why I didn't talk about the Hell Pit Abomination. The Hell Pit Abomination has a companion profile on its weapon, which means you aren't going to be able to add +1 to its attack characteristic, where the other units I mentioned, Storm Fiends, Rat Ogres, and also the Brood Terror, do not have that. So you are going to be able to add +1 to the attacks. And then if you roll a 5 to 6, you get the +1 attacks and also a 5-up ward save on that unit. That can make some of those units incredibly difficult to get rid of, as well as making them even more punchy. So I love that, and I think that's really good. And you get a really good economies of scale on this, because you're making your really solid units, Storm Fiends or Rat Ogres, you're making them that much more like hitty and also more survivable. So I really like that. The next one, Virulent Possession, gives you the ability Corrupted Earth, which is done once per turn in your army at the end of any turn, which will be the end of every turn. You pick up to 3 friendly pestilence units that are in combat to be the target. And then for each target, you make a pile-in move. Then pick an enemy unit in combat with the target and roll a d3. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on that enemy unit equal to the roll. Now, this is an ability that we've seen across multiple different armies. And the reason this is good, and it is good, is because you can move pestilence units onto objectives, which is really nice. They are already in combat, but it means you're going to be able to move even maybe more models on, and then you're going to be able to do a little bit more splash mortal wound damage. And I'm sure if many of you played a few games, there's always that situation where you've left a monster, the enemy's key piece, or even just a unit that's tagging you left with just a wound on, and you would really like to be able to clear that off. So that is going to come in more effective than it seems, but constantly having 3 different pestilence units in combat might be a little bit inconsistent. So, I could see some of the others being a bit stronger. And the last one, Claw Horde, which I really like, is done once per turn in your combat phase. And this is the ability called Claw Picked. Pick up to 3 friendly Verminous units that charge this turn to be targets. Add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Seeing as you got the ability in this book to make some units be able to fight twice, Also give them pluses to wound, a bunch of other stuff we'll talk about later. +1 rend to Verminous units is really nice because you're going to be able to roll way more dice than you necessarily think. And I honestly think Combat Skaven is scarier than it seems, like when you're just doing a read through. So put it down on the table, start moving them around. I think you're going to be very impressed. So those are 4 battle formations. Let me know which is your favorite, and then we'll start looking at the different traits you can take. So on your army list, you are going to be able to choose one of these 3 different heroic traits to go on a hero. It cannot go onto a unique unit, and a unique is a keyword that you can find located at the bottom of a war scroll. Basically, if they're a named special character, those are the unique units most of the time, not all the time. But one of your heroes is going to be able to take one of these traits, and it doesn't have to be your general. Okay, cool. There are 3 to choose from. First one, Scurry Away, is done in any combat phase. The effect is, if this unit is in combat, you roll a dice. On a 3+, this unit can immediately use the retreat ability as if it were your movement phase. Don't forget, if this is on an infantry or cavalry unit, then you're not going to suffer the D3 mortal damage for doing a retreat as well. But this is pretty fun to stick on one of your big monstrous units, like a Verminlord as an example, so that if your opponent is able to get a big charge in with their killer unit, and then you just retreat away. Sure, you take D3 damage, but it's nowhere near as scary as taking the big hit from the enemy combat block. So that's quite a nice ability. Also being able to do it on some really funny little pieces, obviously, like your Screaming Bell, as an example, is fun. Thanks to Carl in the chat for pointing that out. So some really cool little combos there, especially good with how abilities are done in the combat phase, where if the active player does all of their combat phase abilities, the inactive player does. So if you're being charged, you're the inactive player, 3+, you're out of there. Love that. The next passive is Short-Tempered. Add 1 to run rolls and charge rolls for friendly Skaven units where they're wholly within 13 inches of this unit. So if you do Deep Strike or bring a unit in from reserve, or even teleport a unit using your Gnaw holes, immediately you're going to get +1 to charge. So that takes you from a 9-inch charge, because normally you do that from 9 inches away, or you have to be outside of 9. It makes you from a 9-inch charge to an 8-inch charge, which is pretty good. You can also combo this really nicely if you're playing Moulder, who get an additional +2 to charge from the Master Moulder, I think. So now you're going to have +3 to charge, making your charge ranges either longer or more successful, which is also excellent as well. So I love that. And the last one, Skilled Manipulator, is a passive, and while this unit is within the combat range of a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit, it has a 4-up ward save. Each time you make a successful ward roll, you allocate 1 damage point to a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit within this unit's combat range. After the damage sequence for this unit has been resolved, ward rolls cannot be made. So if you have a key unit that you would like to have a 4-up ward save, this is what you're going to take. I personally quite like Scurry Away because movement is really key, and seeing as you've got lots of teleporting, the ability to hero phase move, redeploys, counter charges, you can be all over the place, which is going to be really difficult for your opponent to pin down. I quite like that. And also could see why Short-Tempered, the + to charge, is also excellent. On your army list, you're also going to be able to choose 1 Artifact of Power. There are 3 to choose from. Unique units cannot take an Artifact of Power, and it does not have to be your general who chooses to have an artifact. Super simple, just one of your heroes. 3 to choose from, and they're all great. First one, Foul Hide. At the end of any turn, which does mean every turn, you can heal D3 to this unit. It's a lot of healing, especially on some of your monstrous Verminlord characters. That feels very strong. Next one, Warpstone Charm. I really like. In any combat phase, pick an enemy unit, roll a dice, and on a 3-up, you subtract 1 from the save rolls for the target for the rest of the turn. This is especially nice if you've got a very, very tough enemy unit. And then, as we already learned, if you were to go for the Clawhorde battle formation, this means that you would be adding +1 rend to a Verminous unit, reducing the armor save of an enemy unit by 1. And if you've got rend 1, that means you're going to go up to rend 3 immediately with those comboed abilities. Feels like a lot. And then you're going to be able to balance this against the other ability, Skaven Brew, which is only once per battle. So this, the Warpstone Charm, where you can reduce an enemy's armor save, is on a 3-up, so it isn't always going to happen all the time, but can be done multiple times, whereas once, not in a turn, but over the course of a battle, whereas Skaven Brew is once per battle. Pick a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit holding within 13 inches of this unit to be the target, inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, then add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. So +1 to your attacks characteristic feels pretty nice, especially when we already know that you can add an additional +1 to your attacks characteristic if you run a different battle formation, the one that deals with all of the Moulder units. So now you can have Rat Ogres or Storm Fiends have loads and loads of attacks, which feels really good. So, but only once per battle for that ability. So you've got to really balance on, do you want that big singular punch, or do you want to keep being able to reduce down armor saves, or do you want to make your hero more survivable? Pretty cool selection. On your army list, you'll also get to choose a spell lore, but there's only one spell lore, so you'll choose that spell lore. The spell lore is called the Lore of Ruin, and it has 3 different spells. Each one of the spells is only a 6 to cast, which is really nice because that's 1 below average of 7, which is what you get on 2d6 to cast a spell. So you're more likely to cast them than not cast them, which is great. There are 3 spells, and the first one, Skitter Leap, is an unlimited spell. This means each one of your wizards is going to attempt to be able to cast it, but you cannot attempt to cast it more than once with a wizard. The other 2 spells, Warp Gale and Wither, can only be attempted once. Okay, Skitter Leap, cast on a 6, is pick a friendly Skaven wizard to cast a spell, and then pick a visible friendly Skaven hero wholly within 13 inches to be the target, then make a casting roll of 2d6. Remove the target from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So you're going to be able to teleport your heroes all around the board. Here's where it gets really exciting. Because it's an unlimited spell, you can teleport multiple heroes. What's really nice about that is the ability to teleport a wizard, teleport a hero who might be a wizard themselves, and then in addition, they can then cast another spell or summon a manifestation. If you flip it around and do it in your opponent's turn using the Magical Intervention command ability, which allows you to cast a spell in your opponent's turn, your opponent chooses one of your units, as an example, to be the target of a battle tactic. You could potentially teleport that unit out of the way, or even teleport them to somewhere else on the board to deny some other sort of battle tactic. So it's got loads of applications. And thankfully, also in the Skaven roster, you've got some pretty awesome heroes that you're going to want to teleport. You've got loads of Verminlords, which are really cool. You've also got some pretty good shooting little heroes that you're going to be able to teleport. And here's where it gets really fun. If you teleport them somewhere near one of your Gnaw holes, do some shooting, do some spells, and then you're going to be able to use the Gnaw hole ability to teleport back. Some very fun, interesting choices that you're going to be able to do there, which is cool. So Skitter Leap, excellent. The next spell, Wither, is just a straight up basic damage spell. It's cast on a 6, pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches of the caster, and then inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. It's fine. Whatever. You might ping off a wound. You might reduce something. It's fine. The next one, though, is amazing. Warp Gales on a 6. Pick a friendly visible Skaven wizard to cast a spell, and then pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the target. So that's an excellent range. The target has strike last for the rest of the turn. So if you're looking to do a big damage hit, let's say Archeon's in the middle of the board, strike last, everything that you charge in is going to hit before it hits. Later on, when we talk about the ability to fight twice with some combat units, the fact that they also will be striking last at the strike last step means that if it's your turn, you make the enemy unit strike last, and you'll get to go first in the strike last step. So still being able to fight twice before your opponent can hit you. That's incredible. Being able to cast this in your opponent's turn as well to make it so opposing units, when they charge at you, and then striking last is also great. And in addition, it's got an amazing 18-inch range. So it's absolutely fantastic. All the wizards in your army know all of the spells, or you can choose from them. So you have got the ability, if you've got wizards in different places, to really pick where Warp Gale is going to be cast from. So a really nice suite of spells, I'm going to say. I think I'd be pretty happy with those. Also on your army list, you're going to be able to choose a prayer lore, but you only have one prayer lore. So this is the prayer lore that you're going to choose, which is the Noxious Prayers. There are 3 to choose from, and they're all got a manifestation casting level of 4. I never really know what to call them. Anyway, one of them is unlimited Filth Crust, which means, just like with spells, if you have more than one priest, each one of those priests is going to be able to attempt to chant it, which is good. However, you can't still do it twice with the same priest. Same rules as a wizard. And it's an amazing unlimited prayer. Like I said, it's on a 4. You pick a friendly Skaven priest to chant the prayer, and pick a visible friendly Skaven infantry unit, wholly within 13 inches of them, to be the target. Add 1 to wound rolls to the attack's combat attacks till the start of your next turn. Like we said, there's loads of great infantry units. You've got Storm Fiends, you've got Stormvermin, you've got Rat Ogres. So +1 to wound is really excellent. However, in addition, if the chanting rolls an 8 or more, the target's melee weapons have crit mortals, which is any 6s to hit are going to do a amount of mortal damage equal to the damage profile of the weapon until the start of your next turn. Now, this is already going to combo so effectively with some of the things we've already talked about. Being able to have additional attacks feels really nice. And now all those extra attacks also have crit mortals. Crit mortals also kind of resolves the argument of whether or not you are going to want be able to reduce their save or get extra attacks. Because extra attacks with crit mortals, those mortals immediately go through armor saves. So that's a nice way of skipping that step. The one issue, which I'm sure people are going to want to raise already in the comments, is that access to priests in here is a little bit on the lower side. So getting priests to be able to cast these multiple times. But just more than one unit with crit mortals and then casting a spell on the opponent so that they strike last feels like you're going to do an outrageous amount of damage. The next prayer, Bow Torrent, is also cast on a 4. Pick a friendly Skaven priest to chant this prayer and pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches. Roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit. For each 5+, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. If the chanter rolls at 8 or more, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target for each 4+. That's actually wild. So that's what we would call a horde clearing spell. And normally 5 up is the best you can get. Some abilities it's just a 6, but this you can get it up to a 4 and you can absolutely ruin an infantry unit. Are there necessarily loads of infantry units in the game right now? Not necessarily, but that's still nice and will punch through, especially ghosts. Nighthorn will punch through Nighthorn units pretty nicely, so that's cool. The last one, Rabid Tough, is on a 5. Pick a friendly Skaven priest to chant this prayer. Pick a visible friendly Skaven infantry unit, hold within 13 inches of them, and then subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks that target that unit till the start of next turn. And in addition, if the chant rolls 8 or more, +1 to save rolls. So, like we already said, if you're going for that kind of more Moulder build, the fact that you can add a 5-up ward save to a unit, now you can add +1 save, make them -1 to wound. You can use the command ability All-Out Defense for an additional +1 save, which is going to ignore 2 pips of rend. Very tough unit that you're going to want to use. However, unfortunately, I think your access to priests might be maybe the difficult part to achieve here. Some of you who are new, who haven't watched a video or even understood how to play Age of Sigmar before, might be asking yourself, how is it possible for me on a single dice to get a result of 8 or more? When you're trying to manifest a spell, what you'll do is roll a dice, and as long as it's not a 1, whatever the result is, you can bank for the next time you attempt to manifest a prayer. And then what you can do is you can roll a dice again, and as long as it's not a 1, you can add those 2 dice together to get a higher result later on. You can also use a command ability in your opponent's turn to, again, try to generate some points to save it to use in your turn. Some people won't know how that works, so I just thought I'd explain that. Anyway, incredible spell lore and incredible prayer lore. I think that's pretty nice. Also on your army list, you'll get to choose a manifestation lore. Now, as Skaven, you have your own unique manifestation lore, which is cool, the manifestations of doom, but you can also choose the generic manifestation laws, like Morbid Conjuration, as an example, which right now, at time of recording, is very effective. So what do you get if you decide to go pure thematic and run the Skaven manifestations? Well, there are 3. You got Warp Lightning Vortex, Vermintide, and the Bell of Doom. Now, importantly, the Vermintide and the Bell of Doom are moving manifestations, which means they're going to kind of act like units in that units can't deep strike within 9 of them and stuff like that. They're not going to be able to move within 3 inches in the movement phase for when they want to do charges and stuff. So those are like a little bit more techy as pieces. But the Warp Lightning Vortex, first one we'll talk about, can be set up within 18 inches of the caster and visible to them, and then set up the other 2 pieces of the spell, because it's a 3-part spell, within 7 inches, or exactly 7 inches of the first part, forming a triangle. That's cast on a 7, Vermintide is a 7, and Bell of Doom is a 7, so it makes it really easy. The other 2, Vermintide and Bell of Doom, are set up holding 13 inches of the caster and 9 inches away from enemy units. So what does Warp Lightning Vortex do? Well, its first thing, well, initially, don't forget, manifestations can be killed in Age of Sigmar 4. So you cast them, your opponent can charge them, shoot them, fight them, and then kill them. And when they're killed, they can then resummon them if they want to. So they're not kind of like dead forever. You can just cast them again. You can also banish them in your hero phase and get rid of them that way. Most of them have ward save, so these do have a ward save. So Warp Lightning Vortex has got 7 health with a 6-up save, and it's also got a 6-up ward save. So it's going to be pretty easy to kill and get rid of, which is fine. It's got a passive Warp Vortex where you subtract 2 from the run rolls and charge rolls for enemy units while they're within 6 inches of this manifestation. In addition, if an enemy unit passes across this manifestation, which just means the base, not its very long, sticky out parts of the model, inflict D3 mortal damage on the enemy unit. Most enemy units and enemy models aren't going to move over it unless they're trapped by a piece of terrain that they're not able to move across. Then maybe that's when it will come into effect. I guess one of the main reasons that you'll use it is because of the Warp Lightning Bolts ability, which is done in any hero phase, including your opponents. If this manifestation was not set up this turn, pick each enemy unit within 6 inches on a 4+, inflict D3 mortal damage. Now that could be a lot of mortal damage, especially if you cast this in your turn at an incredibly long range, 18 inches, then an additional 7 inches is going to be 25 inches, and then it's going to affect everything within 6 inches of that. That's a 31-inch range of, well, not the whole 31-inch range, but it's 31 inches effectively, which, seeing as most armies are deployed 18 inches apart, means it's right in the back of the enemy army, which is pretty nice. So just do a ton of damage, or potentially do a ton of damage, but probably your opponent is then going to kill it, and you're going to have to keep recasting it. So that's going to be an issue, and you're going to give them something to charge, and therefore be able to move around the board a little bit easier. So that's something to be conscious of. It's one of those units, one of those spells that's probably very, very good, but is actually quite hard to utilize. Okay, so that's a Warp Lightning Vortex. Let me know what you think about that one. The next one is Vermintide. Again, it's cast on 7, set up wholly within 13 inches of the caster, 9 inches away from the enemy. It's got 13 health with a 6-up ward save and a 6-up armor save, so quite a lot of damage to get rid of it. And it's got 13 attacks in combat that have got crit auto wound. Any 6s to hit are going to automatically wound. Other than that, it hits on 5s, wounds on 5s, it's got no red and is damage 1. But at the end of every turn, it's going to be able to heal D6 to this manifestation. So it's going to really cause a problem for your opponent to just get rid of. It's not necessarily going to do a lot of damage, but it can do things like screen out areas where your opponent is going to try and deep strike, maybe block parts of the board for your opponent. And some of your opponent's units might just end up getting blocked on them because they can't just do that 13 health in one big hit, which is quite fun. And then the last one, which is probably the best one, is the Bell of Doom, which has got 7 health, a 6-up save, and it moves 3d6 inches, set up wholly within 13 inches of the caster, 9 inches away from enemy units. And when spells are set up, they can't then move in the following turn, because anything that's been set up then can't move. And this has got 2d6 attacks in combat that hits on 4s, wounds on 4s, rend 1, damage 1, but it's got a passive, the Toll of Doom, where you subtract 1 from the wound rolls for attacks that target friendly Skaven infantry units while they're wholly within 13 inches of this manifestation. Now, that's pretty amazing. That means most of your units could like clump around the Bell of Doom, and it can follow those units when it needs to, so that you're always going to be -1 to wound, which I think is just really, really strong, and your opponent is going to really struggle with. Is it as strong as the generic manifestations at time of recording? Probably not, but do you know what? Maybe, specifically if you're running a very infantry-focused list, which it does feel like the list is kind of pushing towards, then I think that is very, very good. So that's everything from like the boring section of the book, the homeworky part, and it does feel at time of like the review that it feels like lots of the abilities are stacking onto infantry units to make me want to build a lot of infantry units that can do a lot of fighting. There seems to be loads of movement in the roster as well, especially from the battle traits and also being able to teleport around. So I think that's good. So I'll be looking towards that, but it doesn't mean you can't build also a little bit of a shooting block, which could be really cool as well. Strike Last in the spell lore, excellent. Crit Mortals in the prayer lore, excellent. I'll be looking for a wizard and a priest. Let's go look at all of the characters. So the first character that we're going to look at is Vizzik Skour. The chief priest, or the Pope Rat, or Rat Pope, or whatever you want to call him, is a big monster. Now, the big monster is a level 2 priest, meaning he can attempt to chant 2 prayers in your hero phase, and spicily, we'll get to it in a moment, 1 prayer in your opponent's turn, although that isn't normal. Normally, if they're a priest 2, they can just attempt to do 2 prayers in your hero phase. He's also got a 5-up ward save. He's a monster, he's a hero, and he's also unique, so you can only have 1 of them. There's a War Master, which means you'll have to be your general unless you have 2 War Masters, in which case you choose between the 2. Cool. All right, so 5-up ward save. Let's first start off with his survivability. He's got 15 health, a 5-up save, and a 5-up ward save. So I would say he's got like a medium level of survivability for a monster. You know, he's pretty similar, you know, a 4-up save on a Bloodthirster with a 5-up ward. Actually, they're more survivable than you would think. They normally have 16 health, but they're quite punchy. I would say some people will be a little bit disappointed he doesn't just have a 4-up armor save. So that's, I would say, medium survivability to a little bit fragile, especially going against something big. So you don't want him to be a frontline fighter. You don't want him to get hit by stuff, because he probably will go down pretty quickly, which means he is going to fit into the support role. He's pretty fast, though, which is nice at movement 10. So that's not bad. We like that. Fast is good. If he was not very survivable, but also a little bit slow, that would be rubbish. So movement 10 is great. In combat, he is a little bit swingy in the output that he's going to do. So again, really pushing the idea that he's not necessarily a frontline fighter, but can maybe fight some smaller units. His Unholy Gnaw Staff has got crit mortals, which is great, especially considering it does D6 damage, and it's got 6 attacks. And he hits on a 4, wounds on a 2, and his rend 1, damage D6. So D6 damage, potentially. Don't forget, you can always give him all-out attacks, so it can be 3s and 2s, which is pretty nice. But crit mortals, a couple of 6s to hit, you're going to do a ton of mortal damage. He could potentially do some crazy stuff, but you can't rely on it, and so that's where it gets a little bit swingy. And then all of his little rats, his hosts of vermin, gives him 10 additional attacks. So don't really feel like he's a frontline fighter because of the survivability in the output, but could maybe fulfill that role against some smaller units. What he really does is he brings incredible prayer support to your army, specifically in a couple of ways. We're going to jump straight in and we're going to talk about Death Frenzy, which is his unique prayer. You can see there, and it's cast on an 8. But importantly, it's done in any hero phase, which means it can also be done in your turn, but it can also be done in the opponent's hero phase. So your hero phase and then their hero phase. And in addition, you can use the command ability Magical Intervention to do another prayer in your opponent's hero phase. So this is really stacking just how much prayers this guy can do. So what does his prayer do? Well, you pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches of this unit, or a visible friendly Skaven infantry unit within 13 inches of this unit to be the target, and then you try to manifest it. You're like, Rob, how will I get to an 8? Remember I talked about earlier in the spell section, the prayer section, about how you can stack points and generate them, okay? If the target is an enemy unit, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons to the start of your next turn. Based on the seasonal rules at time of recording, there's also another way to get -1 attacks on an enemy unit. So that means that you can be -2 to attacks against an enemy unit, which is pretty good, which would add to your survivability. But the real reason this guy is really good, and probably the main reason he'll be brought in an army, is because if the target is a friendly unit, that can use 2 fight abilities this turn. After the first is used, however, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn. If the chanting roll was a 12 or more, you can pick 2 targets instead of 1. Now, this is really awesome. And let's kind of stack a couple of the abilities we've already talked about in the book. You've got the ability to put strike last on the enemy unit. So now you could potentially pick 1 or 2 of your units to have strike twice and also strike last, which means you'll be able to hit with both of your units and then one of your units at the strike last step before your opponent is going to when it's your turn. That is a lot of output that you can put into an enemy unit. In addition, in the Prayer Lord, don't forget you can also have crit mortals. So you can have a unit fighting twice with crit mortals. That is just truly crazy. And the fact that you can do this in your opponent's turn is like very, very nice in my personal opinion. So that's I think that is just the primary reason that you're going to bring this guy. There we go. So what can he do to and also I should express one of the other things. Prayers are really good because your opponent can't stop prayers. Normally with spells, I cast a spell, you try and shut it down. Like, that's fine. But this is a non-interactive game here. It's really you're just rolling the dice and you're going to be able to get these buffs and bonuses, which is excellent. Okay, so he can be even better as a priest thanks to the Prophet of the Horned Rat ability, which you can do once per battle in your hero phase. You can reroll chanting rolls for this unit till the start of next turn. So if you did this in like turn 1 and you were going first, you could re-roll all your chanting rolls. In your opponent's turn, that would happen next, you could re-roll them all again. Or you could do attempt to do Death Frenzy with a re-roll, do Magical Intervention with a re-roll, and then if your opponent ended up getting a double turn, you can still do more re-rolls. It's quite a lot, potentially, but at least it'll always be, over 2 turns. And it also means you can very reliably get off Death Frenzy on the turn that you really, really want it to happen. So it's pretty good. Also in the support role, he has got some abilities that you can do in the combat phase. Gaze of the Gnaw is done once per turn across the army in any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a dice on a 2+ for the rest of the turn. If this unit is in combat with the target, when the target is picked to use a fight ability, all of the target's attacks must target this unit and subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for the target's combat attacks that target this unit. The reason this can be very, very strong is if you imagine a line of Stormvermin or even Clanrats in front of Vizzik, then you would have a limited number of attacks that could potentially be put into him. Even with a 3-inch combat range, many of those models might not be able to pile in an attack over the top. This means if you wanted to charge into a unit and then potentially wipe out that unit of, let's say, Stormvermin, right? Then Vizzik activates his ability. You're then trying to hit Vizzik and not the Stormvermin. You don't do a lot of damage to Vizzik because you're still -1 to hit and -1 to wound, and then the other units hit you back. It's a pretty great ability, but you're going to have to really work hard to use it on the tabletop effectively. But when it does happen, it will feel crazy strong, which is good. And also in any combat phase, he's got the ability Fissures in Reality, where you pick each enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the targets, roll a d3 for each target. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So some additional mortal damage, adding to the potential damage you could do in combat. So Vizzik is a super interesting unit. He's mainly a support piece with the survivability that you would want from a support piece. Many support pieces have got 5 or 6 wounds and not very good armor save themselves, so they're much more squishy than Vizzik, and has got some limited combat potential as well. But the real point is he can make units fight twice. And I think that's the key piece that people are going to focus on. So you got to ask yourself, is he going to be good enough? Let me know what you think or how many points you think he should be in the comments below. We had some fun guesses here. I'm going to guess at 380. I'm going to do it across here, and we'll see what that's like when the points do finally emerge. But a pretty cool piece. So the next War Master we're going to look at is Thanqoul. And Thanqoul is kind of like the reverse, where he's a wizard, a 2-cast wizard, and fulfills that support role of being a wizard while also being a combat frontline monster. So you can see down here, he's a wizard with a 5-up ward save. He's also a War Master, so you can choose between the two, and also going to unlock lots of units to run in his regiment in the list building stage. He's also a monster as well, which is cool, that keyword. Lots of units and lots of abilities have anti-monster, so something to be conscious of. Survivability is a little bit more survivable. 14 health, 1 less wound, but, well, 1 less health, but it's got a 4-up armor save. But that 5-up ward save is pretty nice. And to add to his survivability, he's got the Warp Amulet, you can see down here, and that heals D3 to this unit at the end of every turn. So that is a lot of survivability. If you're going to do any healing to something like Vizzik, then you're going to have to use a command point to be able to use something like Rally. This, with Thanqoul, you can do a Rally as long as he's not in combat, which can do healing and also heal at the end of every turn. That's pretty nice. And that healing is also something you can do in combat with the Warp Amulet, whereas Rally you can't. So very survivable, which is nice. Frontline combat fighter, okay. He's got 4 attacks that do damage D3 and 6 attacks that do damage 3 from the Warpfire Braziers. Not bad, but they hit on 4s. The Warpfire Braziers is Ren 2, which is pretty good. But you can add +1 to hit from all-out attack. Now you're spending a lot of command points to do a lot of stuff to generate some value out of this guy. And then he's got a combat profile, and genuinely, I'd be a little annoyed. The Warpfire Projectors, 10-inch range as a range weapon, 6 shots, hits on 2s, wounds on 3s, and is Ren 2, which is excellent, but it's damage 1. It's genuinely like not that impressive. I guess what's nice about this is you start just like whittling some wounds down on a little unit here or a little unit there. So as a ranged unit and also as a combat unit, he's kind of like a, he straddles the line between being neither major effectively, but is survivable enough, I guess. In combat also has got a once per turn ability, Boneripper's Rampage, where you pick an enemy unit in combat, you roll a dice on a 3 to 5, inflict D3 mortal damage. However, on a 6, it's 2D3. So I guess what you're really looking for is the additional damage coming out of the Rampage as well, which is quite nice. So maybe enough damage here, but it doesn't feel like it's a ton of damage. So I'm not going to use him to go and like clear lines. I'm going to go, oh, fight the big enemy unit. Instead, I'm going to go fight those smaller little units. Has also got the battle damage profile, where if he is battle damage, takes 10 or more health points, then his Warpfire Braziers go from 6 attacks to 4. Now, as a wizard, that's why we're really taking him, I think, if we're going to do anything. He's a 2-cast wizard, which is cool. Very efficient, a 2-cast wizard. Probably already worth about 150 to 180 points, a 2-cast wizard. With +1 to cast, that means all of those casts are going to have +1. That's great. Thanks to the passive, Staff of the Horned Rat, you get +1 to the casting rolls. That's pretty nice. he's competing in this army book with other wizards who have other ways to generate higher casting values. So you've got to really weigh that up. But he's also a 2-cast, and has got his own unique spell, the Terrible Madness, cast on a 7. You pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches. Target cannot use commands until the start of your next turn. In addition, roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit, and for each 6, inflict 1 mortal damage. So you could potentially shut down redeploys, could shut down your ability for the enemy unit to bring models back. Some of those are command abilities. There's a bunch of different stuff that you could shut down, but you are requiring a 7 to cast it. So being able to shut down the enemy spells is a situational choice, and you are going to need to be in the right position at the right time for that to be very effective. Whereas using the Strike Last aura is probably the key, Strike Last spell, sorry, is probably the key reason that you're going to be casting spells in this Skaven roster, or at least in the more melee-focused part of this army. And that is everything that Thanqoul on Boneripper does. You have to let me know what you think about Thanqoul on Boneripper. I think he's kind of trying to do a lot of things all at the same time, and that's kind of nice. If he's the perfect all-rounder. He's a 2-cast wizard, which is excellent for any army, being able to bring manifestations. He's okay in a fight, does a little bit of shooting, has a unique spell, is pretty survivable. Feels like a bunch of nice stuff, but in a game where hyper focus sometimes works really well, I'm not sure if he has a place. Let me know in the comments what you think. Our next hero is Lord Skreech Verminking, and he is also a War Master, a 3rd War Master in this roster. Normally just one for leading an army. Anyway, he is a single cast wizard. He's also unique, so you can only have one of him, and he's a monster. And he's got so many keywords. He's got Master Clan, Verminus, Pestilence, Eshian, Scryer, Boulder. He's actually, because he's several different rats that were all molded together in a primordial ooze. Anyway, as a unit, he's 13 health with a 4-up save and a 5-up ward save. So pretty good frontline fighter. In addition, he's got 7 attacks with crit 2 hits, 3s and 2s, Ren 2, which I'm always going to go to bat for Ren 2, and damage 3. So potentially 21 damage coming out of him, which is genuinely pretty nice. Crit 2 hits is really good. If you spike really big, excellent. So yeah. So I like him. I think he's good in that section of the, a frontline fighter that's a bit of a wizard. Fine. And then what does he do for the rest of your army? Well, he has this ability that you do in your hero phase called the 13-headed one. You pick one of the following effects to apply until the start of your next turn. You cannot pick the same effect more than once per battle. The first one, Master of Dire Sorcery, you add 1 to casting rolls for friendly Master Clan wizards while they're wholly within 13 inches of this unit. Pretty good. +1 to cast, so bring a bunch of casters. But because it's only the ability to choose it once, you're only going to have one additionally a little bit more effective magic phase thanks to this ability. And it's going to be my kind of review of each of these. Because you can only get this stacked ability once, then you're going to need an army that's very mixed. You're going to need some wizards, you're going to need some other units to be able to make this whole ability work very effectively. And actually, I'm not really sure the game really works like this. Whereas if we go to the ability to fight twice from Vizzik, that'll work on several of our infantry blocks. So it's a little bit more broad and more usable. The next ability, Commander of the Vermin, add 1 to the charge rolls for friendly Verminus units while they're wholly within 13 inches of this unit. +1 to charge, not a massive bonus, not a reason to bring him. Knower of the Warp Tech, add 1 to hit rolls for shooting attacks made by friendly Scryer units while they're wholly within 13 inches of this unit. Pretty nice. We love that. +1 to hit for the Scryer units, that's good. But then in the next turn, they're not getting the +1 to hit. So have loads of shooting, +1 to hit, now it's not effective. Next one, Deliverer of the Weeping Blades, add 1 to the Ren characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Eshin units while they're holding 13 inches of this unit. He does have the Eshin keyword, like I talked about, so his weapon profile will go up to Ren 3, which is pretty nice. Bringer of the Plagues, add 1 to the chanting rolls for Pestilence Priests while they're holding 13 inches of this unit. Now, what's really nice is your prayers are genuinely good in this book, so +1 to chanting rolls is also excellent, but if you bring a bunch of priests to do a bunch of chanting, that's going to go away. And then, lastly, Shaper of Fleshcraft, heal D3 to each friendly Moulder unit, wholly within 13 inches of this unit. So that's pretty nice, healing D3, but you've got Rally. So there we go. He's got his own unique spell. So ultimately, this ability feels really strong because you can do all these different things, but you can only do all these different things once. And because you've already obviously built your army, as soon as those buffs go away, you don't really have buffs to give out to different units, and that's kind of an odd thing to do. His next ability is a spell, his unique spell called the Dreaded 13th spell, which is cast on a 7. You pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches and then roll 13 dice, and for each 5+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. You can return 1 slain model to a friendly Clanrats unit wholly within 13. You can also get quite a lot of healing into Clanrats units, so that's quite like a fun thing. And if you were running loads of Clanrats, genuinely might be a reason to kind of stack how many Clanrats you can return back with him. It's cast on the 7 though, so it's not going to be reliably cast all the time. He doesn't have any personally native bonuses to cast, no rerolls, no pluses to cast, so he's just rolling against someone else. So I think probably it's less likely to go off than you would think. And then lastly, he's got an ability which is a rampage, which is done once per turn in the army in any combat phase, called Terrifying Monstrosity. Pick an enemy infantry unit, so it does have that stipulation. Roll a dice, and on a 3-up, that's a double stipulation. The target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn, and subtract an amount equal to the roll from the target's control score. So that means, because that double stipulation is less effective, you've got to be in combat with an infantry unit, and you have to roll a dice, and then you get the very small return of using commands. So I got to say, not super impressed with Skreech Verminking. Let me know what you think of him in the comments. I think this is an interesting one, but for me personally, I am not rating Skreech. So now we're going to start looking at all of the Verminlords, and the Verminlords have all got the same survivability profile. There's some little changes here and there, and they all do a slightly different thing. First one we're going to look at is the Verminlord Deceiver. This is a non-unique characters. This is the first time we're going to be able to talk about being able to put an artifact or a trait on any of these models or heroes. So the Verminlord's profile is, like I said, pretty much all the same. 13 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save. It's a hero and it's a monster, and the Deceiver is a level 1 wizard. Pretty cool. It's not too bad in combat with 8 attacks at damage 2, but most importantly is Rend 3 and has got crit mortals. Pretty nice. Rend 3, very nice. Crit mortals also excellent as well. And his shooting profile is even more powerful than the Warpfire projector that you get on Thanqoul, which I think Skaven fans will be a little bit mad about. Anyway, 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 1, but damage 2, whereas a Warpfire projector is only damage 1 for some reason. Okay, so why is the Verminlord Deceiver good? Well, level 1 wizard, pretty good. Good in a fight. Love that. Could do some shooting good. Kind of like a jack of all trades in that regard. But has got some amazing movement abilities. Has got this ability in the combat phase called Burst from the Shadows. It's done in any combat phase, so yours and your opponent's. If this unit is in combat, you roll a dice on a 4-up, you can pick a point on the battlefield within 13 inches of this unit, and within 1 inch of enemy units, remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again within 1 inch of that point. This ability allows this unit to set up in combat with an enemy unit. So imagine that situation. Your opponent charges you with their big scary combat block. On a 4+, you move over to another unit that's not as scary, which is pretty nice. Now, if we take the trait or the artifact, whichever earlier, where on a 3+, we then can do a retreat, that means you'll be able to teleport to another unit and then on a 3+ retreat away with that unit. And then the Verminlord Deceiver could be moving up to 26 inches away in the combat phase in the turn in which you charged it. Then it could also be doing a skitter leap. So there's some pretty fun mobility. It means it's not really fighting anything, but it means it's being in a position to score battle tactics and grab objectives, which is the main way that you win games. So that's quite fun, and I think you can have some really real cool times with that, but you have got to roll a 4-up, you have got to roll a 3-up, so it's not going to happen all the time. And it's pretty survivable, so that's okay. He's also got another ability, which I think this is kind of all across the game. I think it's a bit of a trash ability, but here I am. Anyway, it's a reaction to you declaring a redeploy command for friendly Eshin infantry wholly within 13 inches. So it's a double stipulation. It's a reaction to an ability that you do for a unit in range, infantry within range. The Lord of the Assassins allows, if you roll a 1 to 3 when determining the distance for the redeploy, you can score a 4. I mean, that's pretty good if you're trying to grab an objective, I guess. Move onto an objective, move out of a charge range, I think. If you are doing a redeploy, it's mainly because of something quite important. So I guess if you're trying to do something quite important, moving to a 4 is good. But I personally think that's like a Garbo ability. Like, it's never something I would ever really set myself up to do. So, yeah, anyway, Verminlord Deceiver feels like he could be an incredibly fun unit to play, teleporting around, doing some stuff, pretty okay in combat, okay at shooting, so I'd like to know what you think. Our next Verminlord is the Verminlord Warbringer. Same survivability, 13 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save, a good frontline fighter with 7 attacks in combat, hitting on 3s, wound on 2s. These have got crit mortals and Rend 2. So either way, you should be getting some good damage through. And it's damage 3, so 21 damage, which is pretty nice. Cool. So it's kind of a good frontline fighter. Is it a force multiplier? But it's got 2 different things that it can do to make it a better frontline fighter and a bit of a force multiplier. The first one, Killing Blow, is done at the end of any turn, which does mean the end of every turn, but it's only done once per turn across the army. So if you take multiple Warbringers, then you can only do it the one time with one Warbringer. Pick a damaged enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a dice. If the roll is less than the number of damage points the target has, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So it's effectively d6 mortal damage if that unit has taken like 7 or more damage points to it, which is quite nice. So really good if you're going into like a large monster. You know, could be a big 6 mortal damage, which is really nice, added onto its combat damage. And it's the end of any turn, not bad. But you are going to have to survive the fight back. And then the way it supports the rest of the army is thanks to the Tyrant of Battle ability, which is done once per turn across the army in any combat phase. You pick up to 2 friendly verminous infantry units wholly within 13 inches of this unit to be the target. The targets can each use the all-out attack or all-out defense command this phase, even if the command has already been used by a friendly unit this phase. So what that means is once you've used all-out defense or all-out attack, you can spend another 2 CP to give 2 other units all-out attack or all-out defense. So it's not free like you might see in an elf book, and instead you are going to have to spend the additional points. But there might be a turn in which you want everyone to have all-out attack because this is your big go time. Maybe. Other than that, the Verminlord Warbringer doesn't really bring a lot of support to the rest of your units like Vizzik does with Strike Last, and is an okay frontline fighter. So you got to ask yourself, do you want to bring him? Is he going to bring the pure output that some of the other units are going to bring? Probably not, and doesn't really bring any army-wide support, but is a cool-looking model. So the next Verminlord is the Verminlord Corruptor. Unlike his brethren, other demons, he is a priest and not a wizard, so he's a level 1 priest. But same survivability, 13 health, 4 up save, 5 up ward save. So he's got, you know, same survivability, so an okay frontline fighter. 8 attacks in combat at Rend 2 that do damage to with crit auto wound. You know, okay, he's not fighting the big enemy units, you know, like 6 Agrodons or something like that, but he's fighting smaller units. That's his goal. In combat, to add to this, he's got an ability once per turn, or it's got an ability once per turn in any combat phase where you pick up to 3 enemy units in combat with this unit to be the targets, roll a d3 for each target on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target, and give this unit 1 ritual point. So you can generate a bunch of ritual points, which is super fun. And then he's got an ability called the Lord of the Great Plagues. Now, he's a priest, right? So he could generate a bunch of ritual points for himself, and once per turn in your hero phase, if the unmodified chanting roll for a friendly pestilence priest, of which there are not that many, there is the Plague Priest on Furnace and also Skabic, is a 6. So if you roll a 6, a natural 6, pick one of the following effects to apply. First one, the Crimson Wheel Curse. You pick an enemy unit within 13 inches of this unit to be the target. For the rest of the battle, each time the target uses a move ability, which is actually quite a lot of abilities, inflict D3 mortal damage on it after the move ability has been resolved. Pretty cool. And that's a move ability, not the move ability. The move ability is something you do in the movement phase. A move ability is several things like retreats and charges. So that's a move ability. It's a lot of mortal damage you could potentially take. The Never Plague. For the rest of the battle, you can reroll chanting rolls for friendly pestilence priests. You don't have a lot of those. He is one. I guess that's okay. Rerolls, and then and then the Undulant Scourge. Pick a visible enemy unit within 13 inches of this unit to the target. Inflict 2d3 mortal damage on the target. Okay, so what we're really going to compare is the Verminlord Corruptor against Vizzik. That's the goal. He doesn't chant as many prayers. He's only a level 1 versus a level 2. He does have this unique ability, but it requires you to spike the damage. He's probably like not as... This Verminlord Corruptor is probably more survivable, but not maybe as outputty as the other version. And then does some like combat like stuff. So those are the units to compare with each other, whereas it feels like Vizzik brings so much more support to your army with the fight twice, and the Corruptor just does this fun thing. But actually, let's think about it. That's actually pretty fun. Like, take a bunch of Plague Priests, take the Corruptor, eventually you'll spike that 6. You can have some real fun with that. And I think it's important to focus on units that can be fun. And this could be really, really fun. Okay, we're just taking a break from the Verminlords because we were focusing on being able to have more priests in the book. We thought, let's go look at the Plaguepack. Now, the Plaguepack is not actually a hero, so I'm kind of jumping ahead past the hero section. The Plaguepack, though, was an Underworld's warband and was for a while the battle packs from the indexes were out, kind of in the Legends section. But it's now in the book, which is pretty fun. It's a unit of 5 models and 1 token. And very importantly, if we go down and look, is not unique. So you can have multiple of these. It's not a hero, and it's not unique, but it is a priest level 1. That's pretty cool. 5 models in the unit means that each model in this unit has got 2 health. Okay, with a 6-up save, that's pretty bad. But what we've really got here is a 10 health priest, which you can rally. So we're gonna call this the Ratapalooza. And one of the things that's really fun, it's because it's not unique. This means multiple priests. So if you did want to try and do what we talked about with the Verminlord Corruptor, which is why we're talking about it now, and get more 6s, then multiple plague packs can be what you bring along for a ton of priestly levels. And seeing as one of the the unlimited unlimited prayers that you can get in this book is for crit mortals, ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of crit mortals. That's a lot of crit mortals. So with the exception of being a priest, which is the main thing that we want from this, one of the models in the unit is a Censer Bearer, and it's got a Plague Censer with 4 attacks, damage 2, which is pretty good. And then it's got a couple of different abilities. The first one, the passive Enshrouding Fumes, is subtract 1 from hit rolls for shooting attacks that target this unit, which we love. That's really good, making them more survivable against ranged attacks. And the last passive, Plague Rat. If this unit's Plague Rat, which is an adorable little token, if this unit's Plague Rat is a token, and if you make a chanting roll of a 1, this unit, for this unit, while its Plague Rat is on the battlefield, you can remove the Plague Rat from the battlefield and then re-roll the chanting roll. So not only have you got a priest, you have a more effective priest because of the Plague Rat. So I can genuinely see people running the Plague Pack, maybe multiple Plague Packs, which is pretty fun. And that's going to work really well with the Corruptor, so that's why we talked about it now. So the next Verminlord we're going to look at is the Verminlord Warpseer. Same survivability with 13 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save, and not quite as punchy as some of his brethren with the Doomglaive at 6 attacks, but is damage 3, but hits on a 4. So not necessarily an amazing frontline fighter, but brings loads of support and utility to your army. So maybe the reason you're going to run him. He's a 2-cast wizard, absolutely excellent, similar to Thanqoul. But unlike Thanqoul, I think brings a lot more to your army. First off, he's got the passive Divine the Future, where while this unit is on the battlefield, you add 2 inches to the distance. Friendly units can move using the always 3 claw steps ahead ability. So just to cycle back, that's the battle trait, which in the enemy hero phase, you can pick a unit, and I think it's an infantry unit, and that unit is going to be able to make a move in the enemy hero phase. Adding 2 inches to that, again, shutting down battle tactics, threatening countercharge ranges. Really, really nice. Then he has got an ability called Hurl the Scry Orb, which is done once per battle in any combat phase. You pick an enemy unit in combat, and then this unit can no longer use the Divine the Future ability, so the ability to add plus 2 inches to the move. Instead, you roll a dice, and on a 2+, you inflict that many mortal damage to the unit. So that's good. You're going to be able to add a bunch of mortal damage in at the right time. In addition, he's got a Rampage, which is done in the combat phase, any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat. It's really nice that this is not locked, so just infantry or cavalry, and it could be any unit. Roll a dice, and on a 4+, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn. So the enemy charges you, 4+, strike last. Now, if we were to give him the right loadout, for instance, the trait that allows you on a 3-up to make a retreat, then that means you can roll the 4-up to see if you get the strike last. If you do, you can decide whether or not you want to stay in combat. And if you do not want to, on a 3-up, do the retreat ability. That's pretty fun. This means that if the enemy charges at you and some, Stormvermin or that are nearby, make them strike last, you teleport away, and then, move away, retreat away, and then you can fight with your Stormvermin before they hit you, even though they charge, which is fun. Obviously, combo this with the ability to cast a spell for strike last in your army, which, as a wizard, he's going to be able to bring into the army as well. That's 2 sources of strike last. That's great. And in addition, he's got his own unique spell, which is cast on a 7, where you pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled when making a charge roll for the target to a minimum of 1. So now we're shutting down an enemy unit that's also going to charge. Cast this in your opponent's turn as well. And it's until the start of your next turn. So you cast this in your turn, and then cast this in the enemy turn. This is 2 different units which can have only charge on 1d6, which is devastating, again, for the enemy. So strike last, only charge on 1 dice, super effective. Move you guys a little bit more. You know, it's a little bit disappointing in the combat category, but I think it brings a lot of like debuff utility against the enemy army. Real question is that going to be enough? I can honestly see the Warpseer and Vizzik comboing together really nice. Now we're going to move into the smaller rattos, and our first one is the Arch-Warlock. Arch-Warlock is a power level 1 wizard, and it's got 5 health and a 4-up save, and I don't think he has a ward save, actually. You can take multiples of these if you really want to, but no, it doesn't have a ward save. So survivability, you know, like same as all foot characters, really. It's got a ranged attack of 10 inches, 3 shots, hits on a 4, pretty sad, wounds on a 2, rend 2, damage 1, but does have shooting combat, but, you know, nice to try and pick a few damage off. Not great in combat, 3 attacks, damage 2, and then 2 more attacks, damage 2. I mean, 5 attacks, damage 2 is a pretty standard melee profile, and not bad for a wizard. In fact, actually pretty survivable for a foot wizard. Should be pretty cheap. But the reason that you're going to bring this guy, as well as being a wizard, don't forget a wizard costs about 100 points. So if this guy is like anything more than like basically 100 points is free because you need a wizard. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, his passive, the Overseers of the Engine Covens, is the reason you're bringing this guy, because if a friendly scry unit wholly within 13 inches of this unit uses the covering fire command, no command points are spent. So no command points needed to covering fire. Seeing as covering fire is the strongest mechanic, or strongest generic mechanic currently in Age of Sigmar, looking at event results, every army that does well has some unit that's been reinforced. Let's look at Long Strikes from Stormcast Eternals, Sentinels from Lumineth Realmlords, the Skyfires from Tzeentch, all being incredibly effective. And you've got Jezzails, reinforced Jezzails that don't cost a command point to shoot basically twice every turn. Incredibly good. Probably something you're always going to see in more Jezzail-based lists. Our next hero is a new unit in the Skaven roster, the Warlock Galvaneer. 5 health, 5-up save, no ward save, and isn't a wizard. So, you know, doesn't bring that utility along with him, but you can actually build something really spicy with this unit. So his ranged weapon, which is the reason you take him, is the Warpvolt Obliterator. It's 18-inch range, and it's anti-cavalry +1 rend, and also crit 2 hits. And seeing as it's already rend 2, shooting at cavalry rend 3 is spicy. It's only got 2 shots, but it is 3s and 3s, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, rend 2. And, you know, it has got crit 2 hits, so it could get really fun. And it does D3 damage. All right, okay, I know what you're saying, Rob, I'm not that bothered. Well, let's talk about this, shall we? In any shooting phase, and if you notice, this is not locked as once per army, so let's already take 10. Okay. You can use the more Warpvolt Doom. Pick an enemy unit that had any damage points allocated this turn by attacks made with this unit's Warpvolt Obliterator to be the target. Roll a d3 for each other enemy unit within the target's combat range. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the enemy unit equal to the roll. Now, if you were to take 10, you would have to take several auxiliary choices, so you wouldn't get the choice to go first. But you have this 18-inch death bubble where you shoot one unit constantly and do damage points to it, but the unit next to it takes up to D3 mortal damage and keeps piling up. Is that actually going to be good? Probably not, but it's very fun to think about. And also, if your enemy is building more of a castle-style army, a single one of these could actually potentially do quite a lot of damage. Lots of the abilities in Age of Sigmar 4, you know, are like every unit wholly within 12 inches, every unit within a command range, stuff like that. A lot of units want to be clumped together, so being able to start spreading out lots of mortal damage around them could be quite fun. Okay. So, if we just move up, we can see that as well as that, he has an ability which is once per battle across the whole army in your shooting phase. And that ability is called Lightning Master. Pick a friendly Warpvolt Scourgers unit. I know you're asking yourself, what is those? We'll look at those after. Within this unit's combat range to be the target. Roll a dice, and on a 2-up, set the attacks characteristic of the target's Warpvolt Scourgers to 10 for the rest of the turn. So he's a force multiplier for Warpvolt Scourgers. Personally, if this guy's cheap enough, you know, 80 to 100 points, I think this would be a really fun little unit to include. You know, just out there, popping little dudes. That could be really fun. So, we wanted to talk about the Warpvolt Scourgers. This is a unit of 3 models. And at time of recording, we think it may be a reinforceable unit of 3 models up to 6 models. That's how normal units work. It's only an infantry unit. There should be no reason why you can't. Each model in the unit has got 3 health with a 6-up save, so not very survivable. And they move 6 inches, and they have a shooting attack, which is 15-inch range. That's both got crit 2 hits and anti-cavalry +1 rend. Each model in the unit is going to shoot 2d6 shots, hitting on 2s with crit 2 hits, wounding on 4s, rend 1, damage 1. Don't forget, if you do take the Scryer battle formation, that means that you could get +1 to wound on these, and also +1 rend. So what you really could have is 6d6 shots from a unit of 3 or 12d6 shots from a unit of 6. Hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, rend 2 unless you're hitting cavalry, in which case it's rend 3, and then damage 1. That's quite a lot. But if we go back to our character before, the Galvaneer, on a 2+, he's going to set the Scourger's amount of attacks to 10, the attack characteristic. So if this is a reinforceable unit of 60, a reinforceable unit of 6, that's going to be 60 shots at 15 inches. It's quite a lot of dice. It's quite a lot of dice. Now, don't forget, the Lightning Master ability is only a once per battle ability, and it still happens only on a 2+. So that's something to be remember, and it only happens in your shooting phase. But even if that's not true, 12d6 shots from a reinforced unit of 6 is a lot of shots. So that's pretty good. And in addition to this, we have a hidden weapon team passive. When we talk about all the weapon teams together, we'll remind you of this. But what happens is, while this unit is within the combat range of a friendly Clanrats unit that has 5 or more models, and there are no friendly weapon team units within that unit's combat range, this unit is not visible to the enemy unit more than 13 inches away. So, ladies and gentlemen, they're gonna shoot you before you shoot them. Another nice thing about this unit is, unlike some of the other units like Jezzails, you're gonna be able to move them and then shoot them, which is pretty exciting. So that's a 21-inch threat range, which is pretty scary. You got teleports and other stuff as well. Seems like you could do some crazy damage. Someone in the chat has just done some math for me. 6 models is about 18 damage into a cavalry with a 3-up save. Feels pretty good. Our next hero is the Warlock Bombadier. It's not a wizard, not a priest, just a regular dude with many rockets in his backpack. 5 health, 5-up save, not very survivable. He is a small hero with a ranged attack. His Doom Rocket is 18-inch range with 2 attacks, 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage d6. He's obviously not good in a fight, and he's got 2 different abilities. The first one we'll cover is the More Doom, which is a reaction to you declaring a shoot ability for this unit if it was not set up this turn or has not used a moved ability this turn. What you do is you roll a dice on a 2+, you set the damage characteristic of its Doom Rocket to D3 +3 for the rest of the turn. On a 1, you take D3 more damage. Now, I don't think it's a great idea to have 10 of these, and you can take Skreech Verminking to get +1 to hit on all 10 of them, because hitting on 4s is a bit yikesy, but 10 of them will be 20 shots that do D6 damage. And if they're hitting at infantry, they've got rend 2. That's a lot of shots. Is it good? No. Is it funny? Yes. He's also got another passive called Explosive Payload, where you add one to the hit rolls this unit's shooting attacks that target an enemy unit that has 10 or more models. So the only thing this guy really brings to the game is the ability to do damage at range. So the question is are you going to spend points on this guy, or is there another unit that you could put those points into which does more damage at range? And that's really, because this unit doesn't have a force multiplication, realistically what you're asking yourself is, who does the best damage at range for what points? Our next hero is a Warlock Engineer, 5 health, 5-up save. He is a ranged damage dealer, 24-inch range though this time, with crit auto wound on his Warplock musket. He's got 2 shots, 3s and 3s, rend 2, damage D3. You can actually make that a flat damage 3 as a reaction with more warp energy. On a 2+, it'll be damage 3, but on a 1, he's going to take D3 mortal damage. But I guess the real reason that you're going to bring the Warlock Engineer is because of his ability Sniper Master, which you do in your shooting phase, where you pick a visible enemy hero to be the target. For the rest of the turn, this unit and friendly Warplock Jezzails units, wholly within 13 inches of this unit, can ignore the effects of the guarded hero ability when picking the target for their shooting attack. So really, he's a force multiplier for a unit of Warplock Jezzails. But realistically, is it just better to have more Jezzails, or is the enemy hero that you're trying to kill very, very important? I guess that's the question you're asking yourself with this piece. I probably would just go for more units and wouldn't have this guy, but some people really like him. Our next hero is a Clawlord. He's a melee combat character. 5 health, 4-up save, no ward save, not a priest, not a wizard. So really you're bringing him for the damage output and the support to the rest of your army. In combat, he's got 6 attacks, damage 2, which can go up to 9 attacks thanks to the passive Cornered Rat. While this unit is damaged, add 3 to the attacks characteristic. 9 attacks, damage 2 is as good a profile as some of the big Verminlords. However, he hits on a 3 and he wounds on a 4. So that's pretty rough and has only got Rend 1. So I don't really see this as a fighting piece. However, he has got the ability Gnash, Gnaw on their bones, which is a reaction for you declaring a fight ability with this unit. You pick a friendly non-hero Verminous infantry unit that has not used a fight ability this turn and is within this unit's combat range to be the target. The target can be picked to use a fight ability immediately after the fight ability has been used has been resolved. Now, you cannot have a unit that's... So he fights at the medium step. You have the strike first step, the medium step, and the strike last step. You cannot have a unit, one of your Verminous units, that's at the strike last step, come up to the into the medium step. However, because of the FAQ, what you can do is, thanks to the ability to fight twice, thanks to Vizzik that we talked about earlier, if you had 2 units with fight twice, but they both also gain strike last on the fight twice ability, on the second fight ability, what you could do is you could simultaneously fight with this guy and in the medium step. And then what would happen is you would choose the next unit at the strike last step, which would be the unit that he fought with, and you would then get to choose the first strike last unit in that activation as well. That's what the FAQ said. So you could technically fight with 2 strike last units before their strike last unit. That's an incredibly complicated thing, especially if you're new to Age of Sigmar, but other people out there would be like, that's pretty spicy, Rob, actually. That's pretty fun. But it's going to require you to cast a spell, 2 different prayer, or the same prayer twice, and also fight with this guy and charge all 3 of them at the same time into a unit. So there's a lot of stuff there. Probably don't take him. So next unit is a Clawlord and Gnaw-Beast. It's a new model that came out in the launch box. 7 health, 4-up save, no ward save, not a priest, not a wizard. So what force multiplication does he do? Well, he has an ability called Cruel Commander. In your hero phase, you can pick a friendly non-hero Verminous infantry unit, inflict a mortal damage, and add 5 to the target's control score. That's pretty good for being able to add control to your units, and having control on your units is how you grab objectives. But probably what you want to do is just kill that unit instead, which is way better and smarter. He's also got an ability called Cornered Rat as a passive, where he adds 3 to the attack characteristic of his Warpforged Halberd. That would take him up to 8 attacks, hit on 3, wound on 4, only Rend 1 and damage 2. And then 4 attacks from his mount, which is damage D3. He's also got a shooting attack, just to be clear, which is D6 shots, 3s and 3s, Rend 1, damage 1. I can't think of a reason that the Clawlord would make it into my list when I already have to bring much more expensive heroes that do have force multiplication, and this guy doesn't. So I can't really see him being that useful. Our next hero is the Deathmaster. He's got 5 health, a 5-up save, moves 7 inches, isn't a wizard or a priest, and doesn't have a ward save, but has got some additional survivability thanks to the passive Shadowy Killers. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack that targets his unit is a 1 to 4, the attack fails and the attack sequence ends. That means both shooting and also combat, which is quite nice because you could use him to teleport into, because he's a hero, you could use Skitter Leap, teleport him into the front of the enemy army. So when they were trying to use the command ability to shoot in their turn, they have to shoot the closest target. And seeing as this guy can only be hit on 5s and 6s, might make him more survivable, which is pretty fun. But it doesn't have a very good save. If any of them do hit, he's probably going to die. He's only got 5 health. What's his job? Well, he's probably meant to be an assassin, like a character hunter. He has got 5 attacks in combat, 3s, sadly wounds on 4s, Rend 1, damage D3, but he has got an additional Rend against heroes and also crit mortals. He also is a force multiplier for Eshin units. While friendly Eshin units are wholly within 13 inches of this unit, they can shoot and or charge. They can use shoot or charge abilities even if they use run. So he's really going to increase the speed of units around him, but only if they stay close to him. So that's quite interesting. It depends whether or not you really want to run a bunch of Eshin units. And if you do, you definitely are going to want to run, shoot, and or charge. That makes a lot of sense. But other than that, I can't really see a purpose for him. Fun bit, though, he has got 5 attacks as a ranged weapon that do damage D3, which is better than the Warpfire Thrower that Thanqoul has, which I think is quite funny, but not probably to Skaven fans. Our next hero is a wizard. The Grey Seer, pretty famous, you know, in Skaven world. It's got 5 health and a 6 up save. It's not meant to be a frontline fighter with 3 attacks, D3 damage. So don't put him in the front line. Make him cast spells. And that's what he's really good at. If you do want a wizard in your army, can't look better than this. He's got an ability called Warpstone Shards, which is done in your hero phase. The next time you make a casting roll for this unit, this phase, roll 3d6 instead of 2d6. This roll cannot be re-rolled or modified. If the casting roll is 13, the spell is successfully cast and cannot be unbound. After the effect has been resolved, inflict D3 mortal damage. If the casting roll is not a 13, remove 1 dice from the choice, the casting roll, and use the remaining 2d6 as the casting roll. This means statistically, if you don't roll a 13, that the casting value on that spell is going to be a 9, which is better or equal. It's equal to +2 to cast, or equal to. It's better than +1 to cast, which makes them possibly as good a caster as many good casters in the game with all those pluses to cast. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good and really good, because really what you want to do when you cast a spell is you want it to be successful. I normally shy away from 1-cast wizards. I like a 2-cast wizard because you want to put a manifestation down. But when you have Strike Last in your spell roster, I can see this being very good, right? So I would be really like all the other wizards, with the exception of the Warpseer. I can see if you're just looking for wizarding levels, this is easily one of the most effective in this book, but also one of the most effective I've seen across the game, because you're reliably casting spells, which is why you're spending points in the army to take them. So I really like the Grey Seer. I think it's absolutely excellent. And I would definitely I would look at what I was trying to build into my roster, but on my army list, sorry, but the Grey Seer would probably see a play. Going to mention that also you can take any unit in his regiment, so basically perfect. I got to say that. But if you want your Grey Seer to have more survivability and bring more utility to your army, but probably not be as good a caster, then you can have the Grey Seer on the Screaming Bell. Really survivable, 15 health, 4 up save, 5 up ward save, and a level 2 wizard, basically perfect. That's what you want. A very survivable, good level 2 caster. Good. Not good in combat. 3 attacks from the Staff, D3, 5 attacks from the Rat Ogres, damage 2, 6 attacks from the Crushing Bulk, which is damage 2. It's a lot of attacks, 11 attacks, damage 2, but it's not going to go up against frontline units is what I'm trying to say. Instead, it maybe can just hold off a couple of smaller units. It's got a passive called Altar of the Horned Rat, while friendly Skaven infantry units have a 6-up ward save while they're wholly within 6 inches. Now, wholly within 6 inches is really tight. However, that 6-up ward save could be pretty nice spread across the army, especially as you can put a lot of wounds around that. It's pretty good. You can always make it move sideways as well. Just give you a big aurora. Super annoying to look at, but very funny. In your hero phase, though, you get to use the Peel of Doom ability. Roll a dice and apply. You roll a dice and apply the corresponding effects. This is in your hero phase, so every one of your hero phases. On a roll of 1, you inflict D3 mortal damage on this unit. Don't like that. On a 2 to 4, you get the Wall of Unholy Sound. Until the start of your next turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks made by enemy units while they're within 13 inches of this unit. Really nice. This means you can just plonk it into the middle of the board. That's a 26-inch bubble of -1 to hit. That's huge. You know, from corner to corner, it's massive, making your opponent struggle. -1 to hit is actually very effective in Age of Sigmar 4. Loads of units hit on 4s, and it can be absolutely devastating. Or Devo, if you're English. And he's got his own unique spell, Crack's Call, which is cast on a 6. Pick a visible enemy. Oh, sorry, he's got one more ability. If you roll a 5 to a 6, you get Apocalyptic Doom. You roll a D3, and for each enemy unit within 13 inches of this unit, on a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage that on that unit equal to the roll. Now, 13 inches is actually quite short range, truth be told, although this has kind of obnoxiously been something that's been done multiple times in the past, where you take more than 1 Screaming Bell, because you can have more than 1 Screaming Bell, and you could do more than 1 Peel of Doom, and you could potentially do a ton of mortal damage in AoE. But it's probably a little bit unlikely. It's only going to happen a third of the time, but it is a cool thing to do. But seeing as this guy doesn't do anything, he's a 2-cast wizard, and this is the only thing he does, I think stacking them up doesn't work quite as well. So I wouldn't necessarily do that. He's got his own unique spell, like I was saying, Crack's Call, cast on a 6. Pick a visible enemy unit that does not have the fly and is within 13 inches of this unit to be the target, and make a casting roll. If the casting roll exceeds the target's move characteristic, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the difference between the casting roll and its move characteristic. So, you know, if an enemy unit is only movement 4, you roll 2d6 and you roll a 12, it's an absolutely massive amount, 8 mortal damage. But it's a little bit inconsistent. Really fast units are generally the best units in the game. So, oddly, it's worse because, you know, better units are fast. But like ultimately, it's an incredibly survivable 2-cast wizard, and that -1 to hit bubble feels very strong, especially if you bring the manifestation, you know, unique to Skaven, the Bell, which is another -1 to wound infantry. Infantry around this guy is a 6-up ward save, so now we've got -1 to wound, -1 to hit, and a 6-up ward save. You're building a very survivable Skaven infantry block. It feels very impressive. Our next unit, a fan favorite already, Krittok Foulblade. So the big new rat that's being released with this launch, it's got 6 health, 4-up save, moves 6 inches. And the reason that you're going to take him, I'm going to jump straight down. So, like, as a frontline fighter, not very survivable. But that's fine, because his job is not to be at the front. His job is literally to stand behind a bunch of rats, which is very narrative, thanks to the passive Foster Competition. You add 1 to wound rolls for friendly Stormvermin units where they're wholly within 13 inches of this unit. So if you're running Stormvermin, this guy's going to give them +1 to wound. And that could be multiple units as well. That's super good. Very, very good. +1 to wound is absolutely excellent, especially when you stack it over that many attacks and potentially that many units. Beautiful. Also, don't forget, if we're bringing Vizzik, we're potentially making those units strike twice. So if we're making all of those attacks with +1 to wound and the second set, it keeps scaling up the economy. It's incredible. He's got another ability called a Reputation for Cunning, which is done in the enemy hero phase, and it costs a command point. If this was free, then maybe it would be like, I would be much more excited about it. And I think some people will be very excited about it. So let me know if you are excited about it. A Reputation for Cunning lets you pick 2 different eligible units to use the always 3 claw steps ahead ability, which is the ability that we talked about in the battle traits, where in the enemy hero phase, you can make a full move with a unit. A full move with a unit in the enemy hero phase is really nice because you can move to deny battle tactics, move to grab objectives, to move out if the person is trying to grab a battle tactic, like a bunch of different stuff. What this does, it lets you do it again for a command point, but the second unit or one of the units has to have the Verminous keyword. And obviously, as you're bringing this guy, you're probably going to have some Verminous units anyway, so it's not a bad shout. And it can be mega effective, but I wouldn't have paid points for the unit and then also a CP for the unit just for that. The +1 to wound is why I'm bringing him. In addition, he's got Always Strike First, thanks to Doomfang. This unit has Strike First for the rest of the turn, but it cannot use Commands this phase. He's got 5 attacks damage too. He is not a unit that I want to strike first, or strike even. I just want him to be there, giving +1 to wound. That's his job. And he's also got 2 shots damage D3 with a pistol, which is cute, and I love. Because we were looking at Krittok, we thought we'd look at Stormvermin, again break the process of looking at the heroes, but we're jumping over to the Stormvermin. Stormvermin is a unit of 10 models, and each model in this unit has only got 1 health with a 4-up save, and it moves 6 inches. Now, I'm going to start off with saying I think they should have 2 health, because I'm going to compare these directly to Clanrats in a moment. So, Stormvermin, 1 health each, unit of 10, can be reinforceable to a unit of 20, and a 4-up save, control value 1. Okay, the big thing about these guys is that they have got 3 attacks per model, which is crazy. 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound. If they're near Krittok, it's going to be 3s to wound. Rend 1, damage 1. If they get charged, that goes up to Rend 2. Don't forget, if we take them in a Claw Horde and we charge with them, that will be Rend 2. And also, there's a way to make it so the enemy unit also has -1 Rend. So we can get up to Rend 3 with these guys if we wanted to on the charge. There's also ways to give them extra attacks. And as we know, there's also ways to give them Fight Twice and also Crit Mortals. So if we just give them the extra attacks, just to be nice, then a unit of 20 is going to have 80 attacks, with Fight Twice being 160 attacks, all with Crit Mortals. And if you run the math, that's quite a lot, okay? They've also got a passive called Elite Bodyguard, where friendly Skaven infantry heroes have a 5-up ward save while they're within this unit's combat range. That's obviously also excellent in that they can protect some of your support tech pieces. You're probably going to take some of the largest tech pieces, like, I don't know, the Warpseer or Vizzik, whatever his name is, that guy. You're going to take those guys. but that's still a really nice additional rule. Now, I think a lot of people and me in the chat have had a little bit of a fight about this, so I want you to know let me know in the comments below where you sit. They're like, oh, Stormvermin rubbish, Stormvermin rubbish, Stormvermin rubbish. And maybe they should have had 2 health to differentiate them from Clanrats. But I didn't know that you had a broken unit in your army called Clanrats. Clanrats is a unit of 20 models, right? And if anything, this is incredibly Skaven and narrative that the more models is better. Because Clanrats is a unit of 20 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 40. They have got 1 health each with a 5-up save. They've only got 2 attacks per model, but when you have 40 that's 80 attacks, and when you fight twice, that's 160 attacks with crit mortals, which we've already discussed. But you can give them an additional attack, so I think we got up to something like 240 attacks with crit mortals, which is obviously bananas. So it's not that Stormvermin aren't necessarily good. They probably fulfill the same unit role. You just have a better economies of scale with this unit if you're comparing them fine 1-to-1. However, it's worth pointing out that their rusty weapons also have crit auto wounds if for some reason you don't get the ability to get crit mortals off on them. And they also have an ability called Seethe and Swarm, where you can return D3 slain models to this unit at the end of any turn, which is the end of every turn, which means also getting rid of them is a problem as well. Both of these are infantry units, so they're a little bit slower than some of the other armies, but I guess if you wanted to, you can always use that ability to move in the enemy hero phase. You've got the ability to teleport around the board as well, using the Gnaw holes, which is pretty good, and go fight. So I think Stormvermin, I think if you're kind of having this conversation about Krittok, and then you're having a conversation about Stormvermin, which I think are really good, and then you then move into the Clanrat conversation. So I think all of them are really positive, and you can have some real fun times with them. They'll do something a little bit different, but you can obviously go nuts with Clanrats. The next hero we're going to look at is the Master Moulder. He obviously works really well with anything with the Moulder keyword. 5 health, 6-up save, not a frontline fighter. Has got a D6 shooting attack with damage 1, but it hits on 4s. And don't put him into a fight. That's not his job. His job, if anything, is to heal the rest of your Moulder units, thanks to the Lord of Flesh Grafting at the end of any turn. Pick another friendly Moulder unit wholly within 13 inches of this unit to the target, and you heal 3 to the target, right? Heal 3. So that's pretty good, especially with all the stacking that we already have seen from other healing. Rally is another good example. That's good. So a lot of healing you can put into your Moulder units, and it's the end of any turn. Excellent. And in your charge phase with Tyrannical Packmaster, you can pick another friendly Moulder unit within this unit's combat range to be the target. You add 1 to the charge rolls for the target for the rest of the turn. So pretty nice when you can add another +1 that we talked about earlier. I think in the last version of the rules, it was +2. But so earlier on, I may have said +3, but now you can have +2 to charges, which again, with bringing units on from reserve and also being able to teleport units between Gnaw holes, being able to make a Moulder unit a +2 to charge is really nice, taking it from a 9-inch charge from Deep Strike to a 7-inch charge via Deep Strike. So, you know, are you running Moulder units? Do you want to heal them? Do you want them to charge easier? Then, as long as this guy is very cheap, I could see him play. Our next hero we're going to look at is the Plague Priest on Plague Furnace. So this is a level 1 priest, and that's probably the reason that you're bringing this unit, as well as a couple of little additions. Nice and survivable for a priest. So 15 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save. Definitely something that you could push up into the mid board. Is it good in combat? It's fine. 3 attacks damage D3, 4 attacks damage 3, 6 attacks damage 2. It's got an okay profile, but all of them hit on 4s, and some of them wound on 4s as well. So that can be a little bit frustrating. The reason you probably would bring Plague Priest on Plague Altar is because of the passive corrupting influence. Subtract 1 from ward rolls from enemy units while they're within 6 inches of this unit. That's really nice. Although you get that from a free manifestation in OCR Bonereppers. So that is like a little bit like, you know, it's not as good as, it's very expensive to bring into an army, but if there ends up being an army or a problem unit in Age of Sigmar in the future where they really rely on the ward saves, then you have an option to help deal with those ward saves. Lots of armies don't have this option, so that's quite nice. In addition, it's got a passive called Altar of the Great Corruptor. Friendly Pestilence units have a 6-up ward save while they're wholly within 6 inches of this unit. That's good if you are running a load of Pestilence as well. And it's a priest. which means you got access to your good prayers, which is kind of okay. It feels like it's probably a little bit too many different things, and then the force multiplication that it has, the -1 ward saves and the 6-up ward, isn't strong enough for maybe me wanting to put it together. Right, looking at the other units, we are now past all the heroes. We're going to start looking at the units. I thought we'd start with something fun. Warp Lightning Cannon, a big artillery piece. It's got 8 health and a 4-up save, and thankfully it's got a really nice range of 20 inches, so move 3 inches, shoot 20, 23 inches, pretty cool. It's got a pretty unique shooting profile as well, with 2d6 shots. They hit on 4s, and thanks to the passive Warp Lightning Blast, each attack made with this weapon must target the same unit in the phase. Each hit inflicts 1 mortal damage on the target, and the attack sequence ends. So +1 to hit, it's going to be every 3+. You are going to do a crazy amount of attacks there, mortal damage at range, which is fun. Stack a bunch of them, go crazy. You know, is it super powerful? Not sure. It might be too much elite damage. You know, if someone's got a horde of enemy units, but you could just, you know, nuke heroes. And it is a bit of a centerpiece large model edition. In addition, it's got an ability once per turn in the army, so that's only going to be for 1 of them across your army. In your shooting phase, you can use more Warp Lightning. If this unit is within combat range of a friendly scry hero, add 6 to the attack characteristic for this unit's Warp Lightning Blast. However, for each unmodified hit roll of a 1, the Warp Lightning Cannon will take D3 mortal damage instead. So go crazy, have a great time, just shoot everything you want. I actually really like these. I think they actually might see play, specifically because there are some really big centerpiece models that are really clutch to how some armies work, and they don't want to get shot. So even if you don't get them within range, your opponent is going to have to worry about them, and I think that's super important. Next up, really exciting, the new Acolyte Globadiers. So this is a unit of 5 models. Each model in the unit has got 2 health, but they've only got a 6-up save, so they're very, very fragile. They move 6 inches, and they're a control value of 1. And they also shoot 10 inches, which means they've got a 16-inch threat range. Pretty nice. And their shooting attack is the reason that you bring them. It's 1 attack per model, an extra 1 for the champ. So it's going to be 3s and 3s to hit, rend 1, unless you're shooting against infantry, in which case it's rend 2, and then it's D3 plus damage. Talking about damage, you've got a passive called Gas Clouds, where you add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit's poisoned Wind Globadiers for attacks that target an enemy unit that has 10 or more models. So this could be quite a lot of attacks. 10 attacks, 11 attacks, sorry. Damage D3 plus 1. Sounds brilliant. It really does. You still got to hit. You still got to wound. I think my major problem is that considering 10 inches is incredibly short range, that means that they're very fragile and they're always going to be danger close to the enemy, which means they could get taken back off the board pretty quickly. I would have liked to have seen them either have more shots for the glass cannon that they are, or I would have liked to have seen them have like a more resolute sort of save, or even just have something similar to what we see with the Eshin Assassin, where it's harder to hit them. But these are very fragile, but they can do some good damage. In addition, they do have, to help protect with their fragility, they have Hidden Weapon Team as a passive, where while this unit is within the combat range of a friendly Clanrats unit that has 5 or more models, and there are no other friendly weapon team units within that unit's combat range, this unit is not visible to enemy units more than 13 inches away. So you can kind of ignore shooting attacks and stuff from a certain range, which is good. And then eventually get close. But I think, you know, maybe you could sit them behind a unit of Clanrats, just bury them in the middle, shooting over the top. Maybe that's a good plan. Thankfully, they do have shooting combat, so that is something they are going to be able to do. But let me know what you think about the Globadiers. Please let me know what you think. I think this is interesting. Our next unit is Storm Fiends. Storm Fiends are super cool. A unit of 3 models, reinforceable up to unit of 6. Each model in the unit is 6 health with a 4-up save. They move 6 inches, so a little bit slow, but there are ways to resolve this. Don't forget also, you could always move them in the enemy hero phase, which is pretty scary. You equip them very differently. And also, shout out to Games Workshop on this for the Battle Tome. We've got the different loadouts actually pictured, which is actually very nice. But they do have a description for what you can take here. 1 in 3 models can be armed with a Warpfire Projector and Clubbing Blows, Wind Launchers and Clubbing Blows, Ratling Cannons and Clubbing Blows, Grinder Fists. 1 in 3 can have Doomflare Gauntlets or Shock Gauntlets. Is what we can have. So they've all got different profiles. Basically, you can build a couple of shooties, 1 fighty, or you can build them all fighty, which is nice. if you want to go that way. And I think all fighting is really fun, but some of the shooting is really cool. Rattling cannons, 3d6 shots, reinforced. That means 2 of them are going to have rattling cannons for 66 shots. But I think all fighting is very cool at the minute. You know, Grinder Fists are 4 attacks, damage 2. The Shock Gauntlets are 4 attacks, damage 2, which would be 8 attacks, damage 2. They're not quite as good as some of the other fighting units that are out there, but they are interesting. They're very survivable, 6 health, 4 up save. Don't forget, you can add a 5 up ward save if you roll really well, if you're going for that battle formation, which is nice. They do have the Moulder keyword, so you are going to be able to give them pluses to charge. You are going to be able to heal them, which is really nice as well. Now, they've got a couple of special abilities. The first one is Grinder Fist Tunnelers. So if you do have Grinder Fists, pick this unit if it's in the tunnels below and includes any models armed with Grinder Fists. This is when you put them in to reserve at the start of the game. Set up this unit anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. Boom. That means you're going to be able to then get that big charge off and then charge them in. Also means they can't be shot before they emerge from the ground, which is great. Finally, Shock Gauntlets. Each time an attack is made with a unit's Shock Gauntlets, if they're equipped with them, every time it scores a critical hit, you do d6 hits on the target instead of 1, which means you could go crazy because the Shock Gauntlets are 4 attacks each, damage 2. So if you were to roll 3 or 4 6s, they would turn into d6s, all at damage 2, which is really nice. Yes, another thing worth pointing out is that the Grinder Fist Tunnelers can be set up in any movement phase, meaning you can set this up in your opponent's turn. What's nice about that is your opponent will do any of their movement phase abilities first, then you'll do yours. So you'll actually put these on the board after they've done all their moving, meaning you can put them outside of charge range and put them in a threatening position for a counter charge, a bunch of fun stuff. So yeah, very, very cool. Very solid unit, buildable in quite a few ways, really interact with many of the other abilities that you can see from the army. You can just do some really good work. They've also got the infantry keyword. So thanks to Vizzik, you are going to be able to make these fight twice. And because they're like very survivable, that 4-up save, you could have fight twice on these guys and have an amazing time. So some very cool options for Storm Fiends. Next up, we can look at another weapons team, the Ratling Gun. So each mod in this unit, and I'm almost certain it's a unit of 3. If it ends up just being a unit of 1, then feel free to, in the comments, call me names. The thing is a unit of 3. 3 health per model with a 6-up save. Not very survivable. They move 6 inches, and the Ratling Gun has got a 15-inch range with crit 2 hits with 3d6 shots. 3d6 shots. So I think that's interesting. They hit on 4s, they win on 4s, rend 1, damage 1. Now, if it's just a single one, it's just 3d6 shots. If it is a unit of 3, then hilariously, it's 9d6 shots. If it's a unit of 3 that's reinforceable, it's 18d6 shots. I don't know what the averages are on that, but when you hit on 4s and wound on 4s, let me tell you, it's pretty garbage. You're just rolling a lot of dice to not do a lot of stuff. And they have got rend 1, but crit 2 hits is quite funny. Picking out all the 6s, very fun. So we'll end up seeing what this unit looks like in that situation. Otherwise, probably go for a more, if it's just a single one, probably go for a more dedicated unit that's shooting. They've got the same rule that all the other weapon teams have. Hidden weapon team, where if they're near a Clanrats unit with 5 or more models, and as long as there isn't another weapon teams within combat range, and this unit is within combat range, then it's not targetable by enemy units more than 13 inches away. So these are going to be either basically worthless if there's just one, up to absolutely hilarious if you can have reinforceable units of 3. So I'm praying for reinforceable units of 3, mainly because that's what a Skaven player would want, and I'm here to represent the Skaven players. The other weapon team we're going to look at are the Warpfire Throwers. Again, I'm almost certain it's a unit of 3. Each model in the unit has got 3 health, only a 6-up save, so super fragile. And unlike the other guns, these are super close guns. The Warpfire Thrower is 10-inch range. You're right next to the enemy, which you don't want to be when you're that squishy. They've got 2d6 attacks that hit on 2s, which is wonderful, but they wound on 4s, but they do have rend 2 damage 1. So you're trading off, you can hit better, but you're much closer and you've got better rend, which is great. And they have the same weapon team rule where they're non-targetable or non-visible to units outside of 13 inches, which is pretty good. I think out of them all, I quite like the ones that we looked at earlier, which work in conjunction with the hero. I think the Jezzails might pop it for me. Let's go look at the Jezzails. So looking at Jezzails, Jezzails is unit 3, reinforceable up to unit 6, 2 health per model, a much more respectable 4-up save, move 6 inches. But the key for this is the Warplock Jezzails shoot 18 inches, so they can keep further away. They previously, in the index, shot 24, so I think Skaven players might be a little bit disappointed by that. 2 shots per model, 6 shots across the unit. Do they have a champ? They do have a champ, 7 shots across the unit, which is nice. Reinforceable, obviously, so you can have 13 shots, very narrative. Hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 2, damage 2. If you don't move, then you can use the Warpstone Sniper special rule in your shooting phase to add an additional 6 inches to your range on your weapon. Now, again, Skaven players are going to be a little bit upset about this because this previously used to be +1 to hit. So I think that's a little bit of a downgrade for this unit. But this unit is genuinely, I think, pretty excellent. Maybe we'll see them be points cheaper. But if you don't move at the start of the game, you're going to have a 24-inch, 13-shot damage to unit. All-out attacks going to be 3s and 3s, rend 2, damage 2. That feels like, if not like going to destroy everything, it's going to worry your opponent quite a bit. I quite like it. I think they're really good. As long as they're cheap enough, I think they'll see still really good play. +1 CP for a counter shoot is excellent. Yeah, not terrible. Not terrible at all. Very effective, and most importantly, safe, because they're shooting at long range. Sticking with our gun-based theme that we've got for the the Ratling Warpblaster. So this is a single model with 7 health and a 4-up save and move 6 inches. Its shooting attack is 20-inch range, excellent range, 3d6 plus 3 shots. That hits on 4s, which is sad, wounds on a 3, only rend 1, and is damage 1. But it does have crit auto wound, which is quite nice. Obviously, it's not built for combat, so it's not worth talking about. And it does have the passive overwhelming fire, where you add on to hit rolls for this unit's shooting attacks that target an enemy unit that has 10 or more models. Pretty nice. So then it would be 3s and 3s. And then finally, once per turn across your army, so only usable once for one of them. If this unit is within the combat range of a friendly Scryer hero, this unit's hail of Warpstone bullets has an attack characteristic of 66 plus 3 instead of 3d6 plus 3. However, for each unmodified hit roll of 1, the attack made with this unit's hail of Warpstone bullets inflicts 1 mortal damage on this unit after the shoot ability has been resolved. So one of the problems, in my opinion, is that, you know, this unit is just going to kill itself. But I think this isn't a problem to Skaven players because this is super fun. Maybe it's too expensive to use in a tournament match, but you can just have an incredibly good time with something like this and just roll a ton of dice, maybe kill yourself, maybe not, and just have fun with it. And it's got a good range. You know, give it all-out attack, really commit to the bit and have fun with it. I think the Ratling Warpblaster is at least cool. And it's really good that there isn't like a range unit that does too much damage, because it's actually never very fun. So, and don't forget, you've got Clanrats to do 8 billion damage when you want to do that. So you can just play this for fun. Our next combat unit, finally, no shooting anymore, are the Rat Ogres. Rat Ogres is a unit of 3 models. Each model unit has got 4 health with a 5-up save, and it's got... So the 5-up save is pretty weak source. And movement 6 is, again, not that fast, because you want to be charging with them, and you want them to charge because they're a little bit fragile. And they're all control value 1. So you really want to get them into combat, because when they get to combat, they go crazy. They've got 5 attacks each. Don't forget, we've already got other ways to get them to extra attacks. And thanks to Vizzik, we can make them pile in an attack twice. And their profile is hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, with 5 attacks per model. But we can get pretty nutty thanks to their unleashed Warp Fury ability in any combat phase. You inflict D3 mortal damage on this unit, then add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. There's also another way, thanks to the Moulder ability, to add an additional +1 attack, and we can also take an artifact for a once per battle ability to have +1 attack. So if we were going crazy, we could easily be up to 8 attacks per model, but reliably we can be up to 7, which is pretty nice. We can get +1 to wound, we can get +1 to hit. All of that's very good, and they have got, and so a unit of I think a unit of 6 times 7, 56 attacks, 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Pretty wild. Fight twice, ladies and gentlemen, 100 attacks, damage 2. And then if you're not excited about that, you could be excited. You can give them crit mortals. 100 damage 2 attacks with crit mortals. Amazing. As if that wasn't good enough, 1 in one in every unit of 3, one model in every unit of 3, or 2 in every unit of 6, has got the Warpfire Gun, which is 2d6 shots, 2s and 4s, Rend 2, damage 1. Which is really nice. And then, of course, you can bring this, once this unit has been slain, you can bring that back up to half strength. So it's a really good unit. I think the only thing that really lets it down is the fact it's a little bit slower than some of the other units it may wanting to be charged for. But that's what Clanrats are for. Block up the board, make it so the Rat Ogres can hit stuff, and when they do hit stuff, stuff will die. Next up, we're going to look at the Brood Terror. It's a single monster with 12 health, 5 up save, only moves 6 inches, control value of 5, so great for grabbing an objective. Weirdly, he's a great hybrid unit. He's got a great shooting profile with the Warp Flame Scourger, which is 15-inch range, 2d6 shots, hits on a 4, wounds on a 2, Rend 1, damage D3, which is honestly making Thanqoul's shooting attack look piddly. So very good. It's got anti-infantry +1 Rend, so Rend 2 against the infantry. That's really nice. Doesn't have shooting combat though, and that makes it a really odd hybrid unit, because then when he gets into combat, he's got 5 attacks, damage 3, and 3 attacks, damage 2. Crit mortals on the chain flail. He's going to be very tough to get rid of though, because he heals D6 at the end of every turn. He's also got the Moulder keyword as well, so this means that there's loads more healing available to him, Master Moulder as an example. So it could be very tough to get rid of him, but with a 5-up save, maybe people could just take him straight out. Lastly, he's got the Warpstone Fumes, which is going to help with the survivability, where once per turn across the army, so only one of them, in any combat phase, you can roll a dice on a 2+. For the rest of the turn, you subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they are within 6 inches of this unit. That's actually really good. 2 up, very reliable, much better than the 3-up abilities. And then -1 to hit. He's making loads of enemy units, even if they're not hitting the Brood Horror, hitting other units, -1 to hit. That's excellent. So yeah, really good unit. Doesn't have a ward save, so that's going to make him a little bit fragile. But yeah, Brood Terror. I think the -1 to hit bubble, as long as he's cheap enough, I think he's okay. Next up, we're going to look at the Plague Claw, another artillery piece. 8 health, 4-up save, only moves 3 inches, but shoots 24 inches, which is nice. And then 2 attacks, hits on a 3, wounds on a 2, which is wonderful. Only Rend 1, though, and does D6 damage. And the reason you're going to bring him, if you're going to bring him, because it's probably not for the output, to be honest, is because of the passive Bubonic Barrage. Each time this unit uses a shoot ability, if all of its attacks target the same enemy unit, after that ability has been resolved, roll a dice. If the result is equal to or less than the number of models in that enemy unit that was slain by attacks made by this unit's Plague Claw Catapult, that enemy unit has Strike Last for the rest of the turn. So another source of Strike Last in this army, which is fun. But unfortunately, I just don't think I'm going to take it. The damage is pretty weak source. It's done at range. They've got so much better damage in the army, and I have more reliable Strike Last that I can get. So I think probably it's a miss for me. Our next unit, we're going to look at our Plague Monks, and they're obviously battling it out with Stormvermin and also with our Clanrats in that position to be the best fighting melee block. What do Plague Monks bring that the other units don't have? A unit of 20, reinforceable up to unit 40. Each model in this unit has got 1 health each with only a 6-up save. They move 6 inches, and don't forget they've got that battle formation where they can do mortal damage at the end of every turn, which is quite fun. Each model in the unit has only got 2 attacks each, but there is an additional way to add +1 attack, and of course, because they're infantry, you can make them pile in and attack twice and give them crit mortal damage. So the real question is, how much do these cost compared to something like Clanrats is the real answer. They've also got a passive called Spreaders of Filth and Disease, where each time a model in this unit is slain by a combat attack, that model was in combat with the attacking unit, roll a dice, and on a 6-up, you inflict a mortal damage back after this fight ability has been resolved. If all 20 are killed, it's only up to like 3 mortal damage back. 6 if you kill all 40, which can be pretty good. You know, like if a big monster goes into your army, it doesn't really want to take 6 mortal damage back for the pleasure. And the fact that you can bring 20 back from a gnaw hole is pretty cool as well. But the real question is do you want to do mortal damage back, or do you want to have the Clanrats that are bringing models back at the end of every turn? You got to make a choice between the two. I think that's quite interesting. But I think all of the infantry are kind of vying for a position against each other because all of them can get the same buffs pretty much. I know there are some little differences, but mainly. Next up, we're going to look at another monster, the famous Pit Abomination. It's got 14 health, 5 up save, and it moves d6 plus 5 inches, so between 6 and 11 inches, which makes it kind of okay to actually pretty good if it moves 11. Control value 5, so it's really going to be able to help out on an objective. But the reason you're bringing this guy is because he's absolutely brilliant against infantry. His combat profile is 13 attacks, anti-infantry +1 rend, hitting on 4s, which you can give +1 to hit to, wounding on 2s, rend 2 unless you're hitting infantry, so it's rend 3, damage 2. Pretty impressive. If he does get battle damage, he has slightly less attacks, and he heals d6 at the end of every turn, so he's going to be quite difficult to get rid of thanks to that high health pool, especially with Master Moulder for some additional healing. It can be that you've always got to do 14 health every turn, which actually be super annoying. He's also got this ability that really impacts infantry. His rampage is called Avalanche of Flesh, where you pick an enemy infantry unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a dice, and on a 3-up, you roll a dice for each model of the target unit, and for each 5+, you inflict a mortal damage on the target. Now, I know that's like a 3-up, then a 5-up, but if you're hitting the right infantry unit, like 40 models or something, he's going to go to town and do a bunch of damage and then hit more. The real question when you're talking about output in this army is, because everything in this army seems geared towards making infantry fight twice, or at least that's how I'm reading it, or you're doing a lot of shooting at range. Real question is what is this guy doing compared to a unit of 6 Rat Ogres, a unit of 6 Storm Fiends, a unit of 40 Clanrats or 20 Stormvermin? What is he bringing, especially as those units can be brought back from the dead, even if at half strength? So it feels like this is in a little worse position. But talking about coming back from the dead, he does have a passive called Too Horrible to Die, where the first time this unit would be destroyed before removing from battle, roll a dice and apply the corresponding effect. On a 1, he's dead. On a roll of a d3 for each enemy unit in combat with this unit, on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on that unit equal to the roll, then this unit is destroyed. And on a 5 to 6, it's alive. This unit is not destroyed, and any remaining damage points inflicted have no effect, and then you heal d6, and then you would heal another d6 at the end of the turn. So as long as he's not multi-charged, there's an opportunity for this guy to basically come back from the dead. So it's kind of the same as bringing back a unit half strength, I guess, but a lot less reliable. You can definitely do 1. This is on a dice roll. But if nothing else, it's fun, and I would much rather a unit be fun and do some cool shit versus it being very effective. So I love it. It's great. It's pretty cool, but I think if you're looking for damage units, you're not going to choose the Pit Abomination. Our next unit is Doomflayers. Doomflayers is a unit of 2 models, and each model in the unit has got 4 health with a 4-up save, which is quite nice for what is probably going to be like a cheap frontline kind of like cavalry unit. They move 2d6 plus 3 inches, which is on average is 10 inches, which is quite fast, which is nice. And they have a pretty cool combat profile. Each model does 2d6 attacks with their whirling blades. They're both anti-infantry +1 rend and also charge +1 damage. So a unit of 2 is going to be doing 4d6 attacks, which is about 14 attacks, hitting on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 2 against infantry or rend 1, and then damage 2 on the charge. That's pretty cool, genuinely, for what is probably a little cheap unit running around being annoying. And they've also got an ability in any charge phase called Whirling Doom, like many abilities like it, where if you make a charge, you pick a unit within an inch, roll a d3 on a 2-up, you do that many mortal damage. If you can reinforce this up to a unit of 4, that would be so fun, an absolutely blender amount of units. And it does feel like this entire book is geared towards killing infantry. That's what it feels like. There's been very little anti-monster. There's been some anti-cavalry, but it's all geared towards killing infantry. And you do have other combat choices. You've got Storm Fiends, you've got Rat Ogres, you've got Clanrats, you've got a lot of combat attacks. Sorry, a lot of combat choices. But maybe you just want 2 small units of these to do board edge style battle tactics, because their mobility is pretty fast for this book. So I think that's pretty important. They only have the War Machine keyword and the Scryer keyword. So that's what they have. Another unit that we have is the Warp Grinder, brings some real utility to the army. They've got 8 health with a 4-up save. It's a single model that moves 5 inches. But it does have a pretty cool combat profile with D3 attacks that hit on 4s, wound on 2, rend 3, damage 5. right? Absolutely brilliant. But they have a couple of special abilities, and that's the reason you're going to take them. Although maybe I would just take them for D3 attacks, damage 5. Durthu crying right now. Once per battle in the deployment phase, you can use Tunnel Skulkers, where you pick this unit and up to one friendly non-monster Skaven unit. If those units have not been deployed, you can set them up in the tunnels below. And then in your movement phase, you can use the Warp Ambush. Pick this unit if it's in the tunnels below, then pick an enemy unit more than 6 inches from all other enemy units to be the target. Roll a dice, and on a 4-up, set up this unit within 3 inches of the target and more than 6 inches from all other enemy units. Then set up that unit that was in the tunnels below within 3 inches of the target and more than 6 inches from all enemy units. So what that is that's deploy into combat, which is bananas, right? Because if you have a really good shooting unit that the enemy has a really good shooting unit, you can just immediately just lock that down, which is nice, right? Very, very effective if you've got the right unit. And you do have loads of small disposable units you can bring up, which could be quite fun to do that with. Shutting down units, deploying into combat is really nice. Pretty cool ability. Next unit we're going to look at, and the unit that's probably going to score you more points than you want them to, are the absolutely fugly Night Runners. This is a unit of 10 models. Each model of the unit's got 1 health with a 6-up save, and they move 7 inches. Okay, they've got a control value of 1, and they've got they're a hybrid unit with a missile weapon that shoots 10 inches, and each model shoots 2 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend, damage 1, but it does have crit auto wound and shoot in combat. And then in combat, it's got 2 attacks per model, 4s and 5s, with crit mortals built in. Infantry unit means if we ever wanted to, we can make this unit fight twice, which is pretty funny, I think, with crit mortals built in. And then the other unit can have crit mortals if we wanted to go that way. So honestly, not a terrible unit if they're cheap enough at 10. But where this unit gets really good is for 2 different reasons. The first one, in the deployment phase, you can use Slinking Advance, where this unit can use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase. So this means this unit is going to be able to move 7 inches up. You could do 2 or 3 things with this. Number 1, you can screen against enemy units that might want to charge across the board and take you out, like Varangard as an example. What you can also do is zone, so move up the board again and make it so deep striking units can't land near your fragile units if they're trying to shoot you or do something similar. So that's a good opportunity. What you can also do, though, is move up the board and deny things like take the center battle tactic. You are going to be able to achieve things like grabbing the board edges battle tactic as well. And if you combine this with the 3 claw steps ahead ability you can do in the enemy hero phase, you could potentially have one of these units moving 14 inches up the board before you've even had your turn, if they go first, of course. So you can do a load of battle tactics. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but the way the game works is we've talked about all the damage you can do and all the fighting you can do. If you have some fast units that can do battle tactics, that will win you the game. Points will win you the game, and these guys have got that. In addition, a good way of dealing with those small, fragile, fast units that are trying to do battle tactics is you shoot them. Thanks to the Sneaky Infiltrator's passive, while each model in this unit is within 1 inch of any terrain feature, this unit cannot be targeted by shooting attacks unless the attacking model is within 9 inches of it. Brilliant. So now they have to get close, which means they're moving away from the edges. They're moving away from spaces they might want to be to grab objectives just to deal with your little dudes that are grabbing points. Brilliant little unit, honestly, and might see more play than you want them to. Last unit we're going to look at is the Doom Wheel. 2d6 plus 7-inch movement for an average of 14-inch movement. Pretty nice. It's got 8 health and a 4-up save. No ward save to speak of, but it is the Go Fast Rat Wheel. And it is a hybrid unit like the Doom Flayers. Not like the Doom Flayers, unlike the Doom Flayers. And it's shooting a profile. The Warp Bolts shoot 13 inches, D6 shots, 3s and 3s, rend 1, but damage D3, and they can shoot in combat, which is a pretty high profile. And then the Grinding Wheels melee profile is damage +1 on the charge with only 6 attacks, 4s and 3s, no rend, damage 1 or damage 2 on the charge. So not that impressive as like a combat piece, more of a kind of mobile gun battery, and much more impressive than the Plague Claw as an example for the output that it can do. Only a solo model, so you're not going to be able to like reinforce it and stack that number of attacks. But it does have a really cool ability called Rolling Doom, which you do in your movement phase. This unit can move a distance up to its move characteristic. The unit can pass through other models and the combat ranges of enemy units, but it cannot end that move in combat. Then pick up to 3 enemy units that this unit passed across during that move to be the targets. Roll a d3, and for each target on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. This unit can use the ability even if it's in combat, which is crazy. So you can basically move out of combat, move over stuff, do mortal damage, and keep hitting stuff, which is honestly very fun. And what's nice about it is not locked to just infantry, which you thought it would be. So it's just going to be moving over all sorts of units. And if you take a ton of them, just move over loads of different units, you're going to do loads of mortal damage as you move across stuff, which is cool. Is it a great idea? I don't know. But it's an incredibly fun idea. And I think that's an important thing to keep focusing on. That it's very, very fun. Okay, I just thought I'd take a moment before we started talking about the armies of renown to just break down what I think I've seen in this book so far. So you've got a really good bare bones of an army. You've got the ability to bring models back from the dead. Big thumb. You've got the ability to make the enemy strike last from spells. I think that's also great as well. And you've got a lot of utility from Skit Leap, being able to teleport heroes around, although I'm not sure how effective that'll be. We'll have to see. With some pretty cool, unique manifestations. The -1 to wound one feels really nice because this entire book feels like it's geared towards the infantry and making the infantry better. So having a -1 to wound from the Bell manifestation feels very good. That's what it feels like. It feels like everything is geared towards the infantry. Bringing models back from the dead, be able to fight twice, being able to get minuses to wound, pluses to attacks, saves, additional attacks, just all crit mortals, all feels like it's geared towards that at the moment. So that's what I'm reading and what I'm seeing from all of the abilities and as them stacked on. Spell lore is really good. Manifestation, the prayer lore is also really good. And you now have access, thanks to the Plaguepack, the ability to do some quite a lot of prayers and build that way. So I think that's quite interesting. I think survivability feels like it's an issue. You know, if stuff is super fast, it can hit you, but you do have units. There's sometimes, like as an example with the Eshin unit that can just move up the game pre-board. You might not want to take it because it's not anywhere near as fun as a Warpblaster, but if it stops 6 Varangard from hitting your army, just take it. Just take it, because it's not getting hit by 6 Varangard is not as fun as it's not fun either. So just think about that. That's what I would say. I would say that some of your heroes feel a little bit redundant, but that's probably more of an Age of Sigmar 4 issue than it is a Skaven issue, because you normally only have 2 or 3 heroes. So really, which are your best 2 or 3 heroes? And when some of your heroes are giving you access to 2 cast wizards or the ability to fight twice, feels like a bit of a no-brainer in which ones you're going to pick. But if you start moving away from what the book is trying to make you do and what the book can do, there's some really fun builds. Doom Wheels, Doom Flayers, running all across the board, being pretty wacky. It feels like you can build a really fun gun line. Gun lines are not very good for scoring battle tactics or grabbing objectives, so that's something you need to be conscious of. Just sitting in a corner and shooting isn't grabbing objectives and isn't moving around the board, which the game actively wants you to do through battle tactics and also holding objectives. So that's something you need to do. I love the terrain piece. I think terrain piece can do some really fun stuff. You can do, you can be really clever. All of the teleports, all of the dropping when they land is also really fun as well. So the tempo can be driven by you. You don't have to roll a dice to make it happen. That's pretty good. I think it definitely feels like, especially with the battle pack or the index that just came out, feels like you were missing some key components for how the army wants you to play. And now those models are coming out, I think you're going to see the Skaven army and the armies do much better. I quite like it. I think it's really fun. I think it's fragile if you get hit, but if you hit like an absolute machine. And I think that's a pretty fun place to be, honestly, for Skaven, and really cool. Anyway, let's start looking at the armies renown. And this is also an opportunity. Let me know in the comments below what you think, how you feel, because I learn a lot from that. I've done this entire thing for the past 5.5 hours with a Twitch chat. So we've been talking about it over the time. Like, I've got people like Quick Head Taker who said he thinks that they're overcosted. We don't know the points for these ones right now. I know that a couple of people in the chat were not too excited, but some people were also excited as well. My top 3 units, that's a great question. I think Now we've got deeper into the book. Vizzik, Clanrats, and the Plaguepack. I think those are my top 3 units so far, but obviously points dependent. Let's go look at the Armies of Renown. So the first Army of Renown that we're going to look at is going to be the Great Grand Gnaw Horde. Not super easy to say. What is an Army of Renown? Okay, an Army of Renown doesn't use the battle traits that we talked about at the beginning of the video, if you've watched this whole thing through. And instead, it gives you a new bunch of battle traits, which we're about to talk about now. It also restricts which armies you can take, which units that you can take in your army. And also the fact that you can't bring scenery. Let's talk about what you can not bring. So you can bring Vizzik Skour, Prophet of the Horned Rat, and you should bring him. Then you can have non-unique Master Clan units, non-unique Verminlord units. You can have non-unique Scry units and non-unique Moulder units. You cannot include Regiments of Renown or your faction terrain. So one of the key abilities, which is bringing units back from the dead, will be gone because that is locked into the gnaw holes. In addition, you aren't going to be able to put your gnaw holes out, teleport around them, put units in reserve, none of those. So no faction terrain in that way. Okay, so what do you trade off? What do you get? You don't get 3 claw steps ahead. You don't get the ability to do the retreats, but you do get some nice additional buffs, okay? First one is the Disciples of Vizzik passive, where while a friendly Vizzik Skour, so him, is within combat range of another friendly Gnaw Horde unit, Vizzik Skour has a 4-up ward save. So it's going to be a 5-up save, 4-up ward save. So very survivable. Each time you make a successful ward roll for that Vizzik Skour, you allocate 1 damage point to a friendly Gnaw Horde unit within its combat range after the damage sequence has been resolved. So basically, you put some Clanrats nearby, he gets a 4-up ward save, they take the damage instead. All right, it makes sense, mainly because he's so instrumental in the other abilities. And then you have 3 other battle traits, and like some of the other factions, you aren't able to use more than 1 of these per turn. And that's because they've all got this keyword Warp Shatter Throws. Let's go through them in order. The first one is done in the movement phase, and it's called Frenzied Momentum. In your movement phase, once per turn across the army, you can only use this ability if you have not used any Warp Shatter Throws abilities this turn. So you can only use 1 of these abilities per turn. Pick up to 3 friendly Gnaw Horde units to be the targets. For the rest of the turn, you can add 2 to run rolls and charge rolls for the targets and subtract 1 from the target's control scores. So you get a positive, but you also get a negative. +2 to charge rolls is pretty great, to be honest. I like that a lot. It's very, very fun. Then you've got, in the shooting phase, Unstoppable Warp Volley, which is done in any shooting phase. And then you declare you can only use this ability if you have not used any Warp Shatter Throws abilities this turn. You pick up to 3 friendly Gnaw Horde units to be the targets. For the rest of the turn, you add 3 inches to the range characteristic of the target's weapons, but the targets cannot use commands. Okay, so +3 inches to your range, pretty good on your weapons teams, but no commands, bad on your weapons team. So you got to make that choice. But the fact it's up to 3 units, pretty nice. Your opponent also can't trust that you won't use that ability. So they're always going to have to push themselves out a little bit further away. Lastly, the Reckless Abandon one, which I think is probably the best one, is in any combat phase, once per turn. You cannot use this if you've used the others, like it says before, and pick up to 3 friendly Gnaw Horde units to be the targets. For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons, and then add 1 to the hit rolls for combat attacks that target those friendly units. So +1 attack, very nice, like we've talked about with some of the other pluses to attack on this army. And now you're going to be able to fight twice thanks to having Vizzik in your army. Feels like it's good. You've still got the spell for crit mortals. This feels like the reason to take it, but your opponent can't trust you're not going to do the others, so they have to constantly work around it, which is pretty spicy. You still get access. So those are the battle traits. Let's look at what else you get for this army. Just a quick clarification, a little bit late into the video, but Armies of Renown don't get access to the spell lore or even the prayer lore that you normally would get in your army. It's just like its unique own little army. So you don't get the spell lore, so you're not going to be able to get a prayer lore for being able to do the mortals, and you're not going to get the spell lore for strike last, which is really going to reduce how effective this Army of Renown really is. So let's look at what you do get instead. Okay, with that said, let's look at what you do get. You only get one heroic trait, and that heroic trait is called Harbinger of the Great Ascendancy. And if this unit is not in combat, you can use 2 different Warp Shatter Throws abilities this turn instead of 1. So that is the abilities we looked at before. You can use 2 of them, which is very cool. The Artifact of Power, icon of great total supremacy. You can return up to D3 slain models to each friendly Gnaw Horde infantry unit with a health characteristic of up to 3, which is especially cool for, like, you know, weapons teams or, some of those units. That's quite fun, returning D3 slain models. You only get 1 spell, which is cast on an 8, called Deafening Frenzy, which you cast in your hero phase. You pick a friendly wizard and then an infantry unit within 13 inches. And then if you cast it, that unit gets strike first, but cannot use commands. So that's a little bit of a negative there, to be honest. Strike first, then strike last. You still got Vizzik in your list, so you can still strike first and strike last with the unit, but no crit mortals from this army. Feels like already, why would I play it? Then we've got the Prayer Law Reverberating Ritual. You pick a friendly Gnaw Horde infantry unit wholly within 13. Until the start of your next turn, the target can move an extra 3 inches when it piles in, which is legit a good prayer. In addition, if the chant rolls an 8+, you can add 1 to the target's control score, which you don't really care about. So an additional plus 3 inch pile in is really great, especially if you're bringing big blocks of infantry, pile them all in, so all of the attacks are going to be able to get in. We love that. It's also an unlimited prayer as well, like the spell, both unlimited, so everyone's got strike first, everyone's piling 3 inches. That's pretty good. And finally, the Manifestation Law allows you to only summon the Vermintide. Hopefully you can just swap this Manifestation Law out. I want you to know, at this point, I've pretty much given up on this Army of Renown anyway, because if it truncates you to only a single manifestation that you can summon versus the normal 3 you can do from Skaven or the normal 3 or 4 that you can do from a generic manifestation, I have no idea why I would choose this. I think that this is actually quite disappointing because while it gives you the illusion of choice, it takes so many things away from you that I don't really know why I would want to play with it. I get some strike first, I guess, but I lose the strike last spell. This doesn't seem like something that's great to me. But let me know in the comments below what you think. I would be really interested if you can see a reason to take this over the other abilities you get. Okay, the next Army of Renown is Thanqoul's Mutated Menagerie, and I've actually changed my mind. Armies of Renown are fantastic. I've changed my mind. We're changing it now. Okay, so Thanqoul's Mutated Menagerie has restrictions like the others. Okay, and what can you take in the Menagerie? It's got Thanqoul and Boneripper, a Master Moulder, Rat Ogres, Hell Pit Abomination, Brood Terror, Storm Fiends. You cannot include Regiments Renown. You cannot include Faction Terrain. Okay, we hate that, right? We hate that. But what do we get? Okay, first thing is a passive called Monstrous Entourage, where Thanqoul, who's obviously going to lead this army, gets a 4-up ward save, but like the other ability, has to have a unit within combat range, and then does mortal damage to them instead. So that's the way that works. Very simple. Okay, so what do you get? Why am I so excited? Well, you got this ability in your hero phase called the More Mutation ability. This is done once per turn across your army in your hero phase. You pick a friendly, non-hero, mutated menagerie unit to be the target. You cannot pick the same unit to be the target of this ability more than once per battle. So once you've chosen a unit, that's it done. But you can choose another unit in your next hero phase. That unit gets +2 to the target's health characteristic, +2 inches to the target's move characteristic, +1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons, a 5-up ward save. All of those all at the same time. 6 Storm Fiends with +2, so they're 8 health each, +2 inches to their move, +1 attacks to all their combat profiles, and a 5-up ward save. However, the negative is, at the end of each turn, you allocate D3 +2 damage points to the target. Now, you can really offset that with Rally, which is a command ability in every turn. So you can really super juice a unit of Storm Fiends, which is pretty fun. I love that. And then you could super juice another unit of Storm Fiends the turn after. That's pretty great, to be honest. I love that. So I don't want them to come back from the dead. I just want them to be crazy. So that's pretty cool. Now, you've got 2 other abilities, Spiteful Swarms and Rampaging Demise. Both of these are done in the combat phase, and both of them affect non-hero mutated menagerie monsters. So this would just be a Hell Pit Abomination, or it would be a Brood Terror. What does it do? Well, the first one, Spiteful Swarms, this unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. However, this is instead of a normal rampage ability. When this unit is destroyed, before it is removed from play, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 6 inches. On a 3+, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapons for the rest of the battle. After this ability has been resolved, this unit cannot use any other rampage abilities for the rest of the turn. The reason this is quite fun, especially on a Hell Pit Abomination, if I'm reading this correctly, is you send in the Hell Pit Abomination, you do this rampage where you get strike first, you do all of your attacks, and then the unit is destroyed. You roll all of your dice to see if you reduce their attacks characteristic, but then because it's a Hell Pit Abomination, you roll a dice, and 5 to 6, it's going to come back to life, which is pretty cool. So I love that ability. In addition, there's another rampage which does something very similar called Rampaging Demise. Same thing, instead of using a normal rampage, you use this, you get strike first, and then he's going to be destroyed. But when this unit is destroyed, before it's removed from play, roll D3 for each enemy unit within 6 inches. On a 2+, inflict that amount of mortal damage. So you can basically send a unit in and do a bomb, which is quite fun. So that's a pretty fun little idea as well. I like that. That's cool. So I think the idea of super juicing a unit of Storm Fiends is just really cool. And then sending in a Hell Pit Abomination to blow up is also very cool. Let's look at what else you get. So let's look at what you get. You get a heroic trait called Pack Tactics, which is once per battle in any combat phase, you can pick 2 friendly non-hero mutated monsters, wholly within 13 inches to be the targets. They can use all-out attack again if you want to, but you still got to spend a CP for each one. Not the best. Then we've got Warpstone Innards, which is the artifact that you get. You pick a friendly non-hero mutated menagerie monster, wholly within 13 inches of this unit to be the target. You add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the battle. However, at the end of each turn, you allocate D3 damage points. Now, you can heal a lot, obviously, like the Hell Pit heals D6 at the end of each turn. As an example, the Brood Terror heals as well. So those are both healing and then taking damage, which is interesting. You have a spell, 1 spell, which is an unlimited spell called Untapped Mutation, cast on a 5. Pick a friendly mutated menagerie wizard to cast this spell. Pick up to 3 visible friendly mutated menagerie units wholly within 13 inches with a more warp mutation. Then for each damage point allocated by that ability at the end, then you can add +1 to their control score. So pluses to the control score, I guess, is okay. And the Manifestation Law, you're only allowed to summon the Warp Lightning Vortex. I want you to know that I was so in on the last page, and then this page I'm now out again on the Armies of Renown. And in fact, I'm going to just kind of conclude with my thoughts on the Army of Renown straight off the top of the dome. You lose access to so much. I don't know why you would ever play them. I guess they're fun. Like, I guess someone's going to say they're narrative. I personally think all games of Age of Sigmar are narrative. I always move Thanqoul around the board or Clanrats around the board. I'm not just moving around tokens. So I don't really know what the purpose of them is. Maybe there's a really interesting format in the future when we've got enough battle tomes out where we only run an Armies of Renown event. That's pretty fun. And we try and make that work. But they're so restrictive and you lose so much, I don't know what the purpose of them is, to be honest. Now, I do know that I have to cover, well, not have to, I would like to. I'm excited about covering the Regiments of Renown, but I'm actually going to cover those in separate videos, specifically because actually I think they're not usable in a Skaven army. They're usable in other armies. So cover them in another video and seeing how they might plug into different Chaos factions, which I think would be fun. Let me know what you think of this video. I hope it's been a good, informative, instructional video. Let me know. I know it's quite long. These videos are long. Covering every war scroll in detail is a big deal, and trying to explain it to it make sense to people who are new. Hopefully I've done a good job. Let me know if I have. And I'm really excited to see what people think about the battle tome, what people think about the new units, what people think about the army. I've enjoyed making this video, and if you'd ever like to support what I do, you can join my Patreon, which has got an active Discord community where you can get into, and we've also got some videos and battle reports from events that I run or events that I play in that you can go and check out as well. But yeah, that'd be cool if you'd help support me make more videos in the future. Thanks for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon. Hope you enjoy the rats. Goodbye.